Chapter 1364, Accepting the Job Specializing in Receiving Women. This was the first time Carpenter Pang had heard of this. He felt that it was very novel. Gu Yundong pointed at the blueprint. This is what the interior of the shop looks like. Master Pang, take a look. As expected, Carpenter Pang lowered his head and his eyes immediately lit up. This blueprint was too clear. Almost at first glance, he could imagine what the shop would become in the future. Carpenter Pang had also renovated shops in the past. Most of the time, it was the client who told him where to add cabinets and boxes. No one had ever drawn such a detailed blueprint to tell him the final result. It was just that there were some things that he could not understand, but Gu Yundong would explain. There were even some data on it. Carpenter Pang looked at the blueprint lovingly. Even his two disciples standing behind him could not help but swallow their saliva. After introducing the renovations to the shop in front and the courtyard at the back, it was finally time for the situation on the second floor. Carpenter Pang frowned slightly when he saw the second floor. Gu Yundong knew how to draw, but she did not know much about architectural design. In the past, when she was building a house, Feng would tell her how to modify it. He would tell her which parts were unreasonable and what could not be done, or if the data was too idealistic. She would slowly modify what problems might arise. Gu Yundong had to listen to Carpenter Pang's professional opinion. As expected, Carpenter Pang shook his head at some places on the second floor. To make the second floor look like private rooms, the project was a little big. Many places had to be demolished and rebuilt, so Gu Yundong's blueprint was not very accurate. There was no other way. Gu Yundong handed the blueprint to Carpenter Pang. How about this? It'll tell you how many rooms I want on the second floor and how the layout is. Master Pang, you can decide for yourself after taking the measurements. How about that? Carpenter Pang was stunned. Is that appropriate? Yes, of course. Carpenter Pang looked at Shao Qingyuan again. After all, in their eyes, Shao Qingyuan was the head of the family. Shao Qingyuan nodded. Listen to her. Carpenter Pang was relieved. Gu Yundong and Carpenter Pang talked about some details. Both parties signed a contract and confirmed that Master Pang would start work the next day. After Gu Yundong paid the deposit and the key to the shop, the group left. Now that the renovation was done, the next step was to recruit people. This gave Gu Yundong a headache. In the Xuanhe prefecture, Madame Dai and Nie Shuang had taken care of recruitment matters. She had only arranged for 2 people. Now that she was in the capital, she was really unfamiliar with the place. Where could she recruit people? Especially since the milk tea shop was a novel business, she was worried about hiring ordinary people to work in the shop. It seemed that she could only buy some. The others were fine. They could be bought for training and employment. It was just that the shopkeeper was not easy to find. Gu Yundong decided to ask for Madame Guest's opinion when she went to the Qin residence tomorrow. A few days ago, the Qin family closed their doors and refused guests, so Gu Yundong did not disturb them for the time being. Yesterday, she asked Tong Shuitao to send a card to the Qin family to confirm that she would come tomorrow. Gu Yundong did not know much about the rules of the wealthy families in the capital. It was only when she mentioned it to Yenya 2 days ago that she remembered that she should send the card first so that she would not have missed it. Shao Qingyuan knew that she was going to the Qin residence, so he turned around and asked her, "Shall I go with you tomorrow?" "No need. Qin Wenjing isn't back yet. You'll just sit there and do nothing even if you go. How boring would that be?" Shao Qingyuan thought about it and agreed, so he didn't mention it again. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1365, I want this shop. The next morning, Gu Yundong brought Tong Shuitao directly to the Qin residence. Unexpectedly, not long after they left, Carpenter Pang's disciple called Pang Shan hurriedly ran over and knocked on the door. Shao Qingyuan was reading a medical book. Song Dejiang had given it to him the day before yesterday and asked him to read it first before discussing it with him. Shao Qingyuan was very interested in this medical book. Hearing the knock on the door, Shaowen immediately went to open it. Pang Shan, who was at the door, staggered and almost fell in. Shaowen quickly supported him and asked, "Why are you so flustered? What happened?" Pang Shan swallowed his dry throat and said in a panic, Someone came to the shop to cause trouble. Master is not allowed to work." Shaowen frowned and quickly brought him to look for Shao Qingyuan. When Shao Qingyuan heard this, he narrowed his eyes slightly, put down the medical book, and walked towards the door. "Let's go to the shop to take a look." Shaowen and Pang Shan hurriedly followed. Fortunately, they were not too far from Jinlan Street and arrived not long after. At this moment, there were already a few people poking their heads out and pointing at the entrance of 68 Jinlan Street. At this moment, there were two groups of people confronting each other in the shop. On one side was Master Pang and his disciple, and on the other side, it looked like they were deliberately looking for trouble with 5 or 6 people. The leader was dressed well, like a young master from a rich family. Behind him were his servants. At this moment, this young master-like person sized up Carpenter Pang from head to toe. His eyes were filled with disdain as he said condescendingly, "I'll say it again. I have bought this shop. I'll naturally get someone to repair it later. You guys should leave." Carpenter Pang's face turned red. He was not good with words to begin with, and this disciple beside him was mute. However, he was the one who signed the contract. How could he leave so easily? "Young Master Tang, I've already discussed it with the boss." I don't care if you've discussed it or not. Anyway, I'll leave my words here. If you continue to work here, I won't be polite to you. Think about it yourself. Should you leave now, or should I get someone to throw you out?" Young Master Tang was also very unhappy. He had long taken a fancy to this shop. However, he did not expect that he would act too late. Just a day later, the shop was bought by a woman surnamed Nya. He had asked around. That woman surnamed Nya was not from the capital. Her family was in Shuanhe Prefecture and she was rich. That was why she came to the capital to buy a shop. Her only backer in the capital was her brother, Nyatsong, who was a 7th grade official. It was just a 7th rank official. Young Master Tang didn't fancy him. After all, he wasn't someone without a backer. He even felt that it was the Nya family's honor that he had taken a fancy to this shop. Therefore, young Master Tang came to look for her twice and said that he wanted to buy it. Although he had lowered the price, he was not bullying others, right? However, that woman surnamed Nya did not agree. Young Master Tang felt that she did not know what was good for her and wanted to use other methods. But at this moment, that woman actually left behind this shop and ran back to the Shuanhe Prefecture. Young Master Tang thought that Nya Shuang was afraid of offending him, but she didn't want to sell the shop, so she simply escaped reality. As a result, this shop had been empty. Young Master Tang's temper even rose. "If you have the ability, just leave it here. I'll keep an eye on you and see when you will return to open the shop. If you dare to open the shop, I will dare to come and find trouble. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1366, 100,000 Taels. Young Master Tang did not look for Nyatsong and just watched over the shop for half a year. Unexpectedly, a servant had come to report some time ago that a mother of the Yen family was planning to rent out the shop. However, after a day, she said that she was not renting anymore. Young Master Tang was confused when the shop opened. A carpenter began to repair the shop. They were clearly planning to do business. Could it be that the woman surnamed Nia had returned? Alright, she had finally stopped hiding after half a year. Young Master Tang led his men over. Unexpectedly, when he asked, Carpenter Pang said that the owner of the shop was a couple. The male owner's surname was Shao and he did not know any woman with the surname Nia. Young Master Tang felt that Nia Shuang might have secretly sold the shop. Alright, since she wanted to sell it, why didn't she sell it to him back then? Just as he was thinking, there was suddenly a commotion outside. 3 men walked in one after another. Carpenter Pang turned around and saw that it was Shao Qingyuan. He immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Young Master Shao. Shao Qingyuan nodded and looked at young Master Tang. Young Master Tang also looked at him. He felt that the other party's gaze was so cold that he could not help but take a step back. The servant behind him hurriedly supported him and asked softly, Young Master, are you cold? Get lost. No one will think you're mute if you don't speak. Young Master Tang turned around and hit his head. Then, he secretly took 2 deep breaths and looked at Shao Qingyuan again, as if the person who had retreated just now was not him. He sized up Shao Qingyuan. Yes, he didn't know him. Are you the owner of this shop? Who are you? Shao Qingyuan also looked at him. My surname is Tang. Tang Qijing. Young Master Tang raised his chin slightly. I've never seen you before. You're not from the capital, right? I'm not. Tang Qijing was instantly relieved. When he saw the murderous aura on this person just now, his heart was beating like a drum. He pointed at the shop and said, I'll buy this shop. Name a price. Shao Qingyuan admired his wife. Why was it that every time she took a fancy to a shop, someone wanted to snatch it? Oh, that's not right. Her wife did not buy this shop. So this person was provoked by Nia Shuang. Shao Qingyuan saw his high and mighty appearance and thought that he must have something to rely on. But 100,000 taels, he said slowly. Tang Qijing was stunned and almost choked on his own saliva. How much did you say? 100,000 taels, Shao Qingyuan repeated. If you pay 100,000 taels, this shop will be yours. Have you gone crazy from poverty? 100,000 taels. It was more than enough to buy 10 or 20 shops. He actually asked for an exorbitant price. Was he toying with him? When others heard the conversation at the door, someone quickly laughed. After being glared at by the servants behind Tang Qijing, those people immediately lowered their heads and covered their mouths. Unexpectedly, Shao Qingyuan nodded at Tang Qijing. I've been a little poor recently. My family bought a new house and some assets, so I'm a little tight on money, so I didn't even have time to buy servants. The price of this shop is 100,000 taels. It should be enough. Tang Qijing. ILF *CKU. He was so angry that he laughed. Do you think that's possible? Who the hell will buy your shop for 100,000 taels? Since you think it's impossible, why are you still here? Shao Qingyuan's face turned cold. Tang Qijing felt that the other party was provoking him and did not take him seriously at all. Okay, you're messing with me. He pointed at him and trembled with anger. He immediately said to the servants behind him, smash this place. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1367, Could he be the Shao Qingyuan? The servants were about to make a move. Don't, you can't smash it. Carpenter Pang hurriedly wanted to make a move. Although they had just started work, they had brought a lot of wood over. It would be a loss to smash it. However, how could the servants of the Tang family listen to him? One of them kicked a stool at the side. However, just as he was about to walk forward, someone suddenly blocked his way. Shao suddenly grabbed his hand, turned around, and flipped forward. This person fell to the ground. Seeing this, the servants of the Tang family instantly surrounded him. The four of them fought against Shao alone, but they actually did not have the upper hand. Tang Qijing instantly felt that things were a little tricky. He regretted bringing those servants along today. He should have brought the two skilled ones along. Now that the four of them could not even beat one person, if they lost later, where would he put his face? Tang Qijing's eyes darted to Shao Qingyuan's face. Then, he realized that this murderous aura and bulging muscles might be stronger. He immediately gave up. A wise man submits to circumstances. He understood. Hence, Tang Qijing shouted, "Stop, come back." The four of them already felt that they were going to lose. When they heard this order, they retreated without a word. One of them did not retreat in time and was kicked down by Shao Wen. He quickly got up and continued to run to Tang Qijing's side. Shao Wen was speechless. He also silently returned behind Shao Qingyuan. Tang Qijing exhaled and pointed at Shao Qingyuan. "All right, you're quite bold. If you have the ability, tell me your name." Shao Qingyuan was speechless. Was he stupid? What? You don't have balls. You don't even dare to say your name. Are you afraid that he'll take revenge on you later? At this moment, even though he knew that it was a provocation, Shao Qingyuan still said, "Shao Qingyuan." "All right, Shao Qingyuan, right? Just you wait." Then, Tang Qijing hurriedly led the few of them to the door. However, not long after he walked out, he suddenly stopped and frowned. He turned around and asked, "What did he say his name was just now?" Shao Qingyuan. The servant behind him also reacted. "Young master, could he be that Shao Qingyuan?" Tang Qijing shook his head. "How can it be so coincidental? It must be someone with the same name. But what if? Didn't they say that Shao Qingyuan is a kind person who helps the world? Which kind person doesn't look benevolent? Is he benevolent?" The servant thought for a moment and felt that what the young master said made sense. However, he quickly shook his head and still felt that it was a little suspicious. "But young master, Shao Qingyuan is from Xuanhe Prefecture, and the owner of this shop is also from Xuanhe Prefecture. Isn't this a little too coincidental? Moreover, his age matches." Tang Qijing's expression was a little dark. If it was really Shao Qingyuan, it did not seem appropriate for him to find fault with him. "Young master, why don't we give up on this shop? Back then, you wanted to buy this shop to destroy the Qin family's shop opposite. Isn't the Qin family's shop opposite not doing much business now without you doing anything?" Tang Qijing thought about it and felt that it made sense. He looked at the servant behind him in agreement. "You're right. I'm busy. That shop is no longer worth my attention. Moreover, I don't think the feng shui of this street is good. Look at the Qin family. They've only been open for half a year and they're already in this state. Wouldn't I be at a disadvantage if I buy it?" Of course. The servant nodded repeatedly. However, after taking a few steps, he asked, "Young master, should we tell the royal prince that Shao Qingyuan came to the capital? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1368, Meeting Madame Gu again. Tang Qijing frowned. The royal prince, Zhiyan, was the descendant of an aristocratic family who had said that he had by Muzi and asked Shao Qingyuan to be his servant for a year. He thought for a moment and shook his head. "Forget it. We're not sure if this person is that Shao Qingyuan. If we make a mistake later, the young royal prince will think that I tricked him and skinned me alive." Besides, he was not familiar with the royal prince. It was better not to get involved in the matter between that man and Shao Qingyuan. Tang Qijing looked back at the shop and left in a hurry with his subordinates. Only when they were far away did Shao Qingyuan let Carpenter Pang continue. Carpenter Pang was a little worried and asked him, "Will young Master Tang come again?" "No. That Tang guy came to find trouble and looked like he was showing off." However, when he saw that he could not take advantage of the situation, he immediately left. Although he was a little cowardly, it was obvious that he was not a rash person. He would probably figure out the stranger's identity before taking action. As for after the investigation, he probably wouldn't come again. However, the others didn't know that the shopkeeper of the shop next door quickly came over and said to Shao Qingyuan, "Young master, do you know who young Master Tang was just now?" "Who is it?" Shao Qingyuan really didn't know him. That person said mysteriously, "His mother is the cousin of Marquis Huayin and has Marquis Huayin backing her. If you hit his people directly, he will definitely settle scores with you later." Marquis Huayin. Shao Qingyuan narrowed his eyes. He didn't expect Tang Qijing to be related to Marquis Huayin. Shao Qingyuan fell silent for a moment. The shopkeeper who spoke saw his worried expression and immediately shook his head. He didn't say anything else and turned around to leave. Shaowen walked to Shao Qingyuan's side and asked in a low voice, "Young master, will everything be all right?" "It's fine." Shao Qingyuan comforted Carpenter Pang and the other two. He told them to do whatever they had to and not worry about anything else. Then, he brought Shaowen back to his house in Hatai Alley. Shaowen saw that his young master did not seem to care at all. He picked up the medical book again and read it. At this moment, Gu Yundong had already entered the Qin residence. Madame Gu was very happy to see her. She pulled her and said, "You've been in the capital for a few days. Why are you only here now? The guests I rejected at the door are others. I couldn't wait to welcome you." As he spoke, a small figure ran over from outside. Qin Anning rushed into Gu Yundong's arms eagerly. "Sister Gu, I haven't seen you in a long time. I miss you so much." Has Anning grown taller? Grinning, Qin Anning spun around in front of her and asked, "Don't I look prettier too?" "Yes, you look even better." When Madame Gu heard this, she could not help but hold her forehead. "How can you be so thick-skinned?" Qin Anning pouted and said to Gu Yundong, "Sister Gu, the capital is so boring. I want to go back to Fengkai County. I think you're used to being wild." Previously, in Fengkai County, Qin Wenjing had taken in many students. Although there was a difference between men and women, these people were still fellow disciples to Anning. Occasionally, they would bring her to play and take good care of her. Qin Wenjing wouldn't restrain her either. After she went to Yongfu village, she couldn't even stay in the house and ran out every other day. However, it was different in the capital, especially since Qin Wensheng's current identity was an important minister in the court. Anning's every move was seen by others. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1369, Your Shao Qingyuan is enough. Madame Gu wanted Qin Anning to learn some rules and etiquette, but Qin Wenjing did not care. He doted on his daughter very much and only said that everything was fine as long as she was happy. There was no need to be so rigid like the other women from aristocratic families. It was tiring to look at them. However, Madame Gu felt that if she did not teach Anning now, she would definitely be criticized in the future. What if Anning could not stand those rumors at that time and her reputation was ruined? Would Anning be happy then? Madame Gu and Qin Wenjing had a disagreement over their daughter's education, but they could not determine who was right and who was wrong. Madame Gu only complained to Gu Yundong. She would not spout nonsense in front of others. Gu Yundong did not know what to do. She did not have any children. Her younger siblings were all raised independently. Moreover, their environment and status were different, so she could not give any suggestions. She lowered her head slightly and looked at the lively little girl in front of her. She smiled and said, "I'm afraid you won't be able to return to Fengkai County in a short period of time." Anning sighed and said worriedly like a little adult, "Things don't go well in this world. It's really too difficult for me." Pfft, Gu Yundong was amused. Seeing her, Gu Yundong could not help but think of the children at home. She had already written a letter and sent a pigeon back. If her parents came to the capital, Kiki would probably follow them. However, Yunshu and Yuanji had to study, so they might not come. Madame Gu pointed at Anning. "All right, I'll talk to your sister Gu. Go play first." Oh. Qin Anning could not bear to part with Gu Yundong. However, although she was lively and active, she was also a sensible person. Knowing that they had serious matters to discuss, she bid them farewell and returned to her courtyard. The Qin family's house had 5 courtyards. Qin Wenjing had made so many contributions to the imperial court. As soon as he arrived, the emperor of the capital gave him a residence, and it was an especially good location. Gu Yundong had just walked over and realized that besides the few people they had brought from Fengkai County, they had bought a few more families of servants. They were all quietly doing their jobs and tidying up the huge mansion. Gu Yundong was so envious that her eyes turned red. Why was it so difficult for her to buy a 3-yard house? She sighed in grief and indignation before talking about opening her shop. Last time, Nye Shuang bought a shop. I came over this time to renovate it. When the time comes, I will choose a good day to open it. Madame Guest's interest was immediately piqued. Milk tea shop, new tea pavilion. She had been to the new tea pavilion in the Xuanhe prefecture, but only once. After all, her family was in Fengkai County, so it was impossible for her to often go to the Xuanhe prefecture to drink milk tea. However, after that one visit, Madame Gu started to miss it. Now that she heard that the capital was also going to have it, she was immediately a little excited. Seeing this, Gu Yundong immediately smiled at her. "Yes, it's a milk tea shop. Are you interested in cooperation?" Seeing her ulterior motive, Madame Gu could not help but laugh. "You already have 3 bosses. You have money and ability. Why do you still need me to cooperate?" "Of course I do," Gu Yundong said matter-of-factly. "I need your identity. If others knew that Madame Qin is a partner of this shop, who would dare to cause trouble?" Madame Gu was stunned for a moment before she smiled. "Why do you need my identity? Your Shao Qingyuan is enough, right? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1370, Shao Qingyuan's reputation. Gu Yundong was confused. "Brother Shao." Seeing her like this, Madame Gu suddenly understood. "It seems that you still don't know your Shao Qingyuan's reputation in the capital." Gu Yundong really did not know. She subconsciously straightened her back and hurriedly asked, "Tell me, what happened? What happened to my brother Shao's reputation?" Mrs. Gu coughed lightly and took a sip of water before slowly talking about something she had heard not long ago. Very few people had seen Shao Qingyuan, but most people in the capital, especially the influential families, knew this name. The cowpox vaccination method was a very great achievement. To a country where many people died every year because of smallpox, this was an invention that transcended eras. Whether it was the emperor or others who were born in this dynasty and witnessed it with their own eyes, it was a very deep mark in history. In fact, it would have been fine if that was all. There were countless achievements in this world, and not everyone would be so famous. Most of them became famous after death and were only remembered by the world. However, this matter had been specially promoted by the emperor. Shao Qingyuan, a country bumpkin who was not even a doctor, actually dared to personally inoculate the prince. This courage, boldness, and fearlessness of death really impressed some people. The emperor wanted to promote this method and establish his prestige for the prince. He wanted his name to go down in history, so he secretly got someone to write a few poems to praise this matter. As the greatest contributor, Shao Qingyuan naturally could not avoid such publicity. Moreover, because of his identity, he attracted the resonance and admiration of many citizens. Look, an ordinary person like him had left his name in history because of this matter. The emperor had placed him in an important position, and even the prince was grateful to him. If they worked hard, they might have such achievements in the future, right? Then some scholars began to glorify him. Some tea houses wrote books about his deeds, and some wanted to write biographies about him for future generations to read. Yundong had sweat when she heard that. She suddenly thought of her publicity in the Xuanhe prefecture. It was really similar. But she really didn't expect Shao Qingyuan's reputation in the capital to be like this. Madame Gu smiled and said, "You know now, right? If others know that the shop belongs to Shao Qingyuan who invented the cowpox vaccination method, who do you think will dare to come and find trouble with you? Although your husband doesn't have any power, he has a reputation. Whoever dares to find trouble with your shop will probably be scolded as ungrateful. There are so many aristocratic families and nobles in the capital. Most of them care about their reputation. Who would carry such a blame? At least, for the time being, no one would go and get into trouble. As for when Shao Qingyuan's deeds slowly faded in the future, would they still dare to?" Madame Gu felt that with Shao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong's abilities, they would have grown up. Anyone who came to find trouble with them would be asking for trouble. Gu Yundong could not help but want to laugh. Should she be grateful to the emperor? If he hadn't worked so hard to promote and add fuel to the fire, it wouldn't have had such an effect. She thought for a moment and suddenly asked, "Brother Shao will be recorded in history. What about me? I made the white sugar. It's very popular in the capital now. It's very rare. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1371. A village woman surnamed Gu Yundong was a little excited at the thought of it. Being a historical celebrity was so exciting. However, Madame Gu laughed dryly and lowered her head slightly to take a sip of tea. After a while, she said, "Perhaps, there will be records." A Gu woman in a village in Fengkai County. Gu Yundong was speechless. Could a historian be a good person? Was a woman not worthy of having a name? Gu Yundong was not in a good mood. She took a big sip of tea in frustration. However, she also knew that the world was like this now. There might not even be the word Gu. Unless you were especially famous, even a noble daughter of the royal family and the empress of a country would only have a title and a surname, let alone a commoner like her. Forget it. Gu Yundong did not care much about leaving her name in history. She just wanted to live well now. Now that she knew about Shao Qingyuan, she had an idea. "Nevertheless, I still want to work with you." Madame Gu was a little surprised. "Why?" "Brother Shao's reputation will prevent us from trouble, but the milk tea shop is targeted at rich madams and young ladies. Someone has to take the lead. These people won't spend at my milk tea shop for Brother Shao, but with you around, as the assistant minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs and the wife of the emperor's favorite minister, you will definitely attract many customers." Madame Gu was enlightened. "You're asking me to help you promote it. Actually, this is also one reason. There's another reason. I've discussed it with Madame Dai and Mie Shuang. We'll definitely open shops in other prefectural cities in the future. However, our energy is limited after all. It's impossible for us to have connections in every prefectural city. Therefore, in the future, we'll find a suitable person to cooperate with when we open shops in any prefectural city." Gu Yundong suddenly had this idea after seeing Duanwan in Wanqing Prefecture. However, at that time, she only thought of working with Duanwan in Wanqing Prefecture and did not think about the capital. It was Madame Dai who suggested it when she sent the letter back to them. Their shop was different from ordinary shops. New Tea Pavilion targeted women, rich women. However, such a client group needed someone to take the lead, especially someone with a certain status. Madame Dai and the others had such an effect in the Xuanhe Prefecture, but they could not do it elsewhere. It was impossible for them to find a capable shopkeeper like others who opened shops. Even if a shop opened by an unknown foreigner was novel and well advertised, these madams and young ladies might not buy it. On the other hand, some women in the market would come in to take a look out of curiosity, but this way, their target group would be wrong. New Tea Pavilion didn't need everyone in the prefectural city to know, but it needed everyone in a certain circle to know. The Xuanhe Prefecture had leaders like Madame Dai and Nie Shuang, which was why it was so popular. The Wanqing Prefecture had Duanwan. Although she was not the daughter of an official, she also interacted with the daughters of officials. The Duan family's reputation in the Wanqing Prefecture was enough. In the capital, Gu Yundong felt that the Gu family was very good. Gu Yundong did not need the Gu family to do anything. It was just a name. She would give the shop in the capital a monthly boost. It was mutually beneficial. Because of this, Madame Dave and Nie Shuang felt that they could compress their shares. After all, they were only providing money. They could not help with anything else. When Madame Gu heard her thoughts, she was a little tempted. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1372. You came at the right time. As someone who had seen the Xuanhe Prefecture milk tea shop popular with her own eyes, Madame Gu knew that once the fire in the capital was lit, the effect would definitely be doubled. She had not been in the capital for long. Qin Wenjing had bought a few shops in the capital a long time ago, and her family did not lack money now. But who would complain about having too much money? She still had a daughter now. Looking at Anning, she did not know what kind of person she would marry in the future. As her mother, she naturally had to prepare more dowry for her. When the girl was married, she didn't need to panic when she had money. After hesitating for a moment, Madame Gu could not help but nod. Gu Yundong immediately signed a contract with her. Although they were on good terms, even brothers had to settle accounts clearly. With the contract, if Qin Wenjing did not agree in the future, it would not be good to go back on his word, right? Gu Yundong happily put away the contract. Madame Gu also happily put the contract into a box and locked it. Then, the two of them began to discuss the opening of the shop. Before the shop opens, they'll send an invitation to the madams and young ladies in the capital to our residence as guests. We've been in the capital for so long, but we've never invited guests. When the time comes, take out some new things like milk tea, double-skinned milk, fried chicken, and pastries for everyone to try. These people will definitely like them. Gu Yundong thought so too. This was a rare opportunity for publicity. At the mention of the banquet, Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes slightly and said, "Then can you do me a favor and invite the Madam and Miss of Marquis Huoyan's family?" Marquis Huoyan's family. Madame Gu said, "Who do you want to see in Marquis Huoyan's family?" Yes. Gu Yundong did not hide it. Brother Shao's background might be related to Marquis Huoyan. Madame Gu was surprised. Of course, she knew that Shao Qingyuan's background was still a mystery. Previously, Qin Wenjing had told her that they had suspected the Tao family. Later, they confirmed that the third young master of the Tao family was not Shao Qingyuan, and there were no more clues. Qin Wenjing had also helped to keep an eye out, but they did not expect it to be related to Marquis Huoyan in the capital. Yes, the surname of Marquis Huoyan was Shao. Madame Gu hurriedly said, "It's naturally not a problem for me to invite Marquis Huoyan's family. However, if you want to know Shao Qingyuan's background, I'm afraid it won't work. You don't know, but Marquis Huayin's family has been keeping a low profile in recent years and doesn't like to stand out. In addition, Marquis Huayin is now mediocre. Although he has the title of Marquis, he has received an idle position and doesn't have any real power in his hands. His younger brother is the same. There are two smart people in the younger generation, but they're only elementary scholars now. Therefore, the old madam and the marquis' wife don't like to go out. However, the heir apparent's wife likes fun. If we invite them to a banquet, the people who go out will probably be from the heir apparent's generation. The younger generation was only a few years older than Gu Yundong. It was impossible for them to know about Shao Qingyuan's background 20 years ago. Even if they came, she would not be able to find out anything. Although the daughter-in-law of Marquis Huayin was eloquent, she had only married into the Marquis mansion for 6 to 7 years. Gu Yundong frowned slightly. It made sense. Although the Qin family was currently popular, the Qin family did not have an old madam. It was impossible for other families with higher seniority to come over. Seeing her conflicted expression, Madame Gu smiled and said, "But you came at the right time. Although we can't invite the old madam and the others of Marquis Huayin over, we can go to the Marquis mansion." Gu Yundong's eyes lit up and he hurriedly asked, "What do you mean? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1373, Person Drenched in Sweat. Madame Gu smiled and said, "Previously, I received an invitation from the Marquis mansion saying that the plum blossoms in the backyard of Marquis Huayin's family had bloomed and invited everyone to admire the flowers. Originally, I thought that I wasn't familiar with them and wanted to reject them. Now that you want to go to the Marquis mansion, this is an opportunity. Flowers could be admired anytime. They were just looking for an opportunity to hold a banquet." In the short time that Madame Gu had been in the capital, many ladies from aristocratic families had held banquets. She had received countless invitations, and Madame Gu had only gone twice. Marquis Huayin's family's heir's wife was relatively late. It was really because the old madam and the others didn't like this kind of liveliness, but they still had to socialize. Moreover, Marquis Huayin's family had been glorious in the early years, so their plum blossom forest was really big and beautiful. There were indeed many madams and young ladies who went for the beautiful scenery. Gu Yundong immediately smiled. What a coincidence. When is the date? 2 days later. 2 days later, Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. All right, I'll go. Then, Madame Gu gave Gu Yundong some instructions and told her about the situation in Marquis Huayin's residence. She asked her to stay for a meal before sending her out. Gu Yundong only realized something after leaving the Qin residence and getting into the carriage. She had forgotten to ask the Gu family if they had a candidate for the female shopkeeper. However, after thinking about it, she decided to forget it. In any case, they would meet again in 2 days. When the time came, it would be the same if she asked. When she returned home, she saw Shao Qingyuan leaning against the recliner reading a book. When Shao Wen was not around, Gu Yundong sent Tong Shuidao away. She walked over and laid on him. She hugged his waist and said, "I heard a lot about you when I went to the Qin family today." Shao Qingyuan quickly hugged her to prevent her from falling. When he heard this, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "Me? What is it? So you're so famous in the capital. Your reputation seems to be very useful." Shao Qingyuan put down his book and propped himself up slightly. He carried her and sat on his lap. "It's all untrue. Outsiders say I have a kind face." Gu Yundong burst out laughing. She held his face and looked left and right. After a while, she nodded. "You do look kind." Shao Qingyuan narrowed his eyes, pressed her head down, and kissed her. This girl was very bad. She even dared to tease him. Gu Yundong was overjoyed. She leaned into his arms and talked. She told him about her cooperation with Madame Gu in the Qin residence and also about going to Marquis Huayin's residence in 2 days. Speaking of Marquis Huayin's family, Shao Qingyuan was silent for a moment. He thought of Tang Qijing, whom he had met in the shop today. This person's mother seemed to be the cousin of Marquis Huayin. Tang Qijing, hearing this name, Gu Yundong nodded, indicating that she would remember it. Shao Qingyuan looked at her and said, "I'll go with you in 2 days and wait for you outside the mansion." Unfortunately, only women were invited. Gu Yundong smiled and pinched his face. "Are you worried?" "Yeah." "All right, then wait for me outside." If there were any clues, she could tell him immediately. After all, it was about his background. She hoped that she would gain something from this trip to the Marquis mansion. Gu Yundong wanted Shao Qingyuan to reunite with his family as soon as possible. 2 days later, Gu Yundong and the others took a carriage to the Qin residence early in the morning. Then, they met up with Madame Gu and headed to Marquis Huayin's residence. However, not long after they left, a carriage hurriedly entered Hatai Alley and stopped in front of the Shao family's house not long after. Then, the coachman turned around and helped the sweating person out of the carriage. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Ads by PubRev Chapter 1374. Something urgent. After the people in the carriage got out, the coachman hurriedly went forward and knocked on the door. Instead, after knocking for a long time, there was no response. The coachman turned around and looked at the person behind him. Song Dejiang frowned when he heard someone open the door of the house next door. Mrs. Yu poked her head out. When she saw them, she hurriedly said, "Are you looking for the Shao family?" "They're not around." The couple went out in a carriage early in the morning. When Song Dejiang heard this, he quickly turned around and asked her, "Do you know where they went?" Mrs. Yu shook her head. "I'm not sure about that." "Is there something urgent?" "Leave your name. When they come back, I'll help you tell them." "My surname is Song." "They'll know once you tell them." "I do have something urgent to attend to. If they come back, please help me pass on the message." Mrs. Yu waved her hand. "It's no trouble at all." Song Dejiang thanked her again before wiping his sweat and hurriedly getting into the carriage. He glanced at the Shao family's gate and said to the coachman, "Let's go to the shop on Jinlan Street to take a look." The coachman quickly changed direction and went straight to 68 Jinlan Street. Unfortunately, when Song Dejiang stood in the shop, he only saw the busy Carpenter Pang and the other two. Carpenter Pang said that Shao Qingyuan and his wife had not come today. Song Dejiang was a little frustrated. When the coachman saw this, he quickly helped him up. "Master, we don't have time to look for them. If we don't go back, we might." Song Dejiang exhaled, and something in his eyes slowly became firm. He gritted his teeth and lowered the curtain of the carriage. He instructed the coachman, "Let's go back to the residence. At most, I'll apologize to them when they come back." The coachman nodded and drove the carriage even faster. Soon, they returned to the Song family. At this moment, Shao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong had no idea that Song Dejiang was looking for them anxiously. They had already followed Madame Gu to the door of Marquis Huayin's family. Gu Yundong glanced at the door, turned around, and said to Shao Qingyuan, who was sitting in the carriage, "I'll go in first." "Okay, be careful. If you see anything wrong, come out." Gu Yundong laughed. "I'm just going to admire the flowers. Why do you make it seem like I'm going to the battlefield?" "Don't worry, I'll take good care of myself." Shao Qingyuan held her hand. "I'll wait for you outside." After Gu Yundong got off the carriage, Shao Qingyuan nodded at Madame Gu. "Sorry to trouble you." It was not until Madame Gu led Gu Yundong and Anning into the residence that Shao Qingyuan sat back in the carriage. This was the main gate of the Marquis mansion, so it was not appropriate for the carriage to stop here and wait. Shao Qingyuan looked around and realized that there were also some official residences near the Marquis mansion. There were no large tea houses or restaurants, but there was a tea shop at the entrance of an alley further away. Shao Qingyuan asked Shao Wen to pull the carriage away and sat down in the shop. Gu Yundong followed Madame Gu through the door and quietly looked up to assess the scenery in the Marquis mansion. As expected of the once prosperous Marquis Huayin's mansion, the mansion was even larger than the one the emperor had bestowed to Qin Wenjing. Even though the current Marquis mansion was far inferior to the past, the scenery was still spectacular. The servant led them through the weeping flower door. Immediately, a person welcomed them with a smile. "Mrs. Qin, you're finally here. I was just saying that I should take a look at the door. Come. This way." As she spoke, she looked down at Qin Anning and said, "You must be Anning. You're so pretty and smart." Anning obediently paid her respects. Only then did Gu Yundong know that this was the wife of the heir of Marquis Huayin. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1375, Gu Yundong is Inconspicuous. The heir's wife smiled and stood up. She looked at Gu Yundong with a puzzled expression. This is my niece. Her husband's surname is Shao. She heard that the plum blossoms in the Marquis mansion are seen in our capital and insisted on coming over to take a look. I brought her here to meet her. I hope you won't take offense." Although Madame Gu was only a few years older than Gu Yundong, Qin Anning addressed Gu Yundong as elder sister, and Gu Yunshu was Qin Wenzheng's disciple, so the seniority could only be calculated like this. "Of course I welcome you. I like people. My husband's surname is Shao. Who knows, we might have been a family 500 years ago." Gu Yundong pursed her lips and smiled meaningfully. Wasn't that so? She had come exactly because they might be a family. She followed suit and bowed. Then, the heir's wife led them inside. Before they got close, Gu Yundong saw a rose-red scenery in the distance. It was really beautiful, like a paradise. It was indeed a scene in the capital. The plum blossom forest in the Marquis Huayin's mansion was indeed beautiful. Gu Yundong could not help but hold her breath. Even Madame Gu was a little surprised. Seeing them like this, the heiress couldn't help but purse her lips and smile. "Let's go. Standing far away now is the best. Being in the plum forest is another feeling." "That's right." The few of them continued walking. Soon, they heard low voices and laughter. It seemed that there were already many madams and young ladies in the plum forest. When they saw Madame Gu coming over, a few people immediately stood up to welcome her. After all, he was a popular person in front of the emperor. Even though there were many aristocratic families with statuses higher than Qin Wenjing, they still smiled at Madame Gu and did not dare to underestimate her. Gu Yundong held Qin Anning's hand and stood quietly at the side. She listened to Madame Gu introduce her and then nodded slightly in greeting. However, there were too many people. Not long after, the smile on Gu Yundong's face could not hold on any longer. She was not the only one. Anning, who was beside her, could not help but shake Gu Yundong's hand a few times. After finally walking to the pavilion and sitting down, the heir's wife finally said, "Anning, do you want to go over there to play? The little girls are all over there. Do you want to join in the fun?" Actually, Qin Anning did not want to go. She felt that they were not on the same side. However, she was even more unwilling to stay here. Her mother and these madams and young ladies would definitely talk for a long time. She was too bored. In any case, it was fine as long as she left this place. She did not have to play with those people. Therefore, she nodded and looked at Madame Gu. Madame Gu glanced at Gu Yundong. She knew that she had a motive for entering the Marquis mansion. She could not sit here with her all the time. Hence, she said to Gu Yundong, "Yundong, help me keep an eye on her. She'll listen to you. Don't let her go wild." "All right." Gu Yundong nodded obediently and bade farewell to the other madams and ladies. She then held Qin Anning's hand and left. In the eyes of many madams, Gu Yundong was not eye-catching. This married woman was probably just using Qin Wenjing to see the world. Without her around, these people felt more at ease. The maidservant quickly led Gu Yundong and Qin Anning to the other side of the forest. When they were almost there, Gu Yundong saw 7 or 8 young girls laughing and playing. They were probably all under the age of 10. Qin Anning was not willing to go over. She stood where she was and spoke to Gu Yundong. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Ads by PubRev Chapter 1376. The apology isn't pure, however, the girls on the other side saw them. The people who were playing looked at each other. Not long after, 2 ladies of the same age as Anning ran over and stood in front of Qin Anning, inviting her. "Anning, are you coming with us to play?" Qin Anning did not. She did not like these people. They liked to compare at such a young age. It was either that their parents doted on them or that they had learned the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. They were praised and rewarded. They even asked her if she was very knowledgeable. After all, her father was a young genius and had caused a sensation back then. Later on, when they found out that Anning was not as good as them, they all looked at her in a strange way. It was as if she had embarrassed her father just because she was not a talented girl. Therefore, the last time they met, they parted on bad terms. Qin Anning did not expect them to come looking for her again. Frowning, she shook her head and said, "I'm not going. I want to accompany my sister Gu." The 2 girls looked up at Gu Yundong curiously. Then, they turned around to look at the other little girls and quickly said, "Anning, come with us. It was our fault last time. When we went back, we were scolded by our parents. We know our mistake and won't do it again." Startled, Qin Anning's heart softened at the sight of how guilty they looked. The young lady was not a calculative person to begin with. Since they had already apologized, it would be rude of her to continue harping on it. She immediately pursed her lips and said softly, then I'll forgive you." Then, she looked up at Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong laughed. "You can go if you want. I'll be here admiring the flowers myself. Just call me if you need anything." Gu Yundong and Qin Anning had different thoughts. She knew that these people would condescend to come over and invite Anning because of her father. They said that they had been scolded by their parents last time. She guessed that their parents had asked them to build a good relationship with the young lady of the Qin family. The apology was not pure, and they did not really realize that they were wrong. But what did it matter? Anning was young. Deep down, she longed to play with other children. If she was restrained, Anning would never know the true thoughts of these young ladies in the capital. As Qin Wenzheng's daughter, the people she would come into contact with in the future were these people. She could not avoid them. Gu Yundong just watched from the side. Qin Anning quickly followed the 2 young ladies to their small circle. Gu Yundong had sharp eyes and noticed that there seemed to be a young lady in the center of them, who looked even younger than Anning. Thinking about it, this young lady was also a person of noble status. When Gu Yundong saw that they were speaking quickly, she separated her attention and sized up the people around her. Most of the people in this area were the maidservants of those girls. They basically stood far away. Some were alone, and some were gathered together to talk. The rest were the old maids in the marquis mansion. Yundong's target was these people. She saw an old woman picking up the plum blossom branches that had been torn off the ground. She was probably afraid that the young masters here would accidentally step on them and fall. Yundong narrowed her eyes and quietly reached into her sleeve. She took out the silver bracelet from her space and put it on her wrist. This silver bracelet was specially made after she heard the news from Liangzi in the Wanqing prefecture. If the marquis mansion was really Shao Qingyuan's house, then the elders of the marquis mansion should have seen this bracelet. If you find any errors, ads pop-up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1377, Yundong's Little Trick. Yundong wore the bracelet and specially walked to the old woman's side. She bent down and picked up one of the broken branches. The hand with the silver bracelet stretched out in front of the old man. For you. The old woman was stunned. She followed the bracelet's hand and looked up. Then, she was shocked and said in fear, I don't dare to trouble madam. I can do it. Yundong stretched the bracelet in front of her again. I'm fine. It's just a matter of convenience. Madam, just enjoy the flowers and tea. There are snacks in the pavilion over there. If you need anything else, feel free to tell me. Yundong nodded. All right, I understand. Thank you. After saying that, she turned around and wanted to leave, but the bracelet slid down her wrist and fell to the ground. Seeing this, the old woman hurriedly picked up the bracelet and handed it to Yundong. Madam, this is your bracelet. Yundong turned around. Why did it fall off again? The buttons don't seem to be reliable anymore. I have to get someone to repair it later. As she spoke, she reached out to take the silver bracelet. The old woman took a few more glances at the bracelet. Yundong's eyes lit up and he asked, Have you seen this bracelet before? Huh? The old woman was stunned for a moment before shaking her head. I've never seen it before. I just think this bracelet is quite unique. Yundong was speechless. The corners of her mouth twitched. It was indeed quite unique. Yundong was a little disappointed that this old woman had never seen it before. The old woman left quickly. Yundong put the silver bracelet back on her wrist. Unexpectedly, when she looked up, she saw a group of maidservants not far away pointing at her. Yundong narrowed her eyes and looked at them coldly. Immediately, two maids did not dare to make a sound, but two of them looked at Yundong provocatively. Yundong frowned when she suddenly heard Qin Anning's angry voice. Sister Gu is not a servant of our family. Sister Gu is very capable. You're not allowed to speak ill of her. Yundong looked over and saw that Qin Anning's face had indeed turned red. She pushed one of the young ladies unhappily. That little girl was the one who seemed to have a noble status. As expected, as soon as Anning pushed, one of the maids who had provoked Yundong just now ran over quickly. Princess. She hugged the little girl and reached out to push Anning. Yundong's pupils constricted. An adult's strength was different from a child's. Anning pushed the little girl and only made her retreat. This maidservant pushed Anning and was about to make her fall. Yundong suddenly rushed forward and quickly supported Anning before she reached the end. She frowned at the maidservant. However, the maidservant looked at her young master tightly. Little princess, are you all right? Are you injured? After saying that, she looked up at Anning. What's wrong with you? If you want to talk, just talk. What right do you have to hit her? If our little princess is injured, can you bear the responsibility? Anning pursed her lips. After a moment of silence, she said, It's my fault for pushing her. I apologize, but it's also wrong for her to hurt someone with her words. She has to apologize too. The servant girl was so angry that she laughed. Our little princess. Before she could finish speaking, the little girl in her arms stopped her. The young princess pushed the servant girl away and raised her chin arrogantly. I didn't say anything wrong. Why should I apologize? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1378. Gu Yundong is a country bumpkin. The young princess raised her head and looked at Gu Yundong again. Her eyes were filled with contempt. How powerful can a country woman like her be? She can't even compare to my maidservant. I don't know what Mrs. Qin is thinking. She actually brought such a bumpkin into the marquis mansion. How embarrassing. You. Qin Anning stomped her feet in anger. She's not a bumpkin. How is she not a bumpkin? Another young lady chimed in. Didn't you say just now? Her family is in that village. You even said that she brought you to the mountains and fields to catch cicadas with you. You even ate cicadas. Just thinking about it makes me feel disgusted. You also said that her younger brother didn't have the money to go to school in the past. Later, he finally started to learn with your father. I didn't mean that. Qin Anning looked at Gu Yundong anxiously. Yes, she was the one who said those words. However, she just wanted to tell these people that Sister Gu treated her very well and played with her. There were many interesting things in the village. It was clearly these people who asked her about her previous life in Fengkai County. Why did they say that Sister Gu was a bumpkin? Also, she just wanted to tell them that Yun Shu was very good at studying. He had only been in her father's school for a year, but he had already surpassed most of the students. He would be the top scholar in the future. These people deliberately misinterpreted her meaning. The young lady looked at Gu Yundong anxiously. She did not want her to misunderstand her. She did not want Sister Gu to hate her. Gu Yundong lowered her eyes and patted her head. She smiled and said, I know. Don't be anxious. Anning's personality was a little like Madame Guess. Madame Gu was not good at arguing with others. Actually, this also meant that the mother and daughter were protected too well by Qin Wenjing. Seeing that Gu Yundong did not misunderstand, Anning heaved a sigh of relief. When she looked up again, she faced the girls with her head held high. When the young princess saw this, she was immediately indignant. Especially a country bumpkin like Gu Yundong. She did not even look at her when she ran over, as if she looked down on her. She was extremely displeased. Pointing at Gu Yundong, she said, Qin Anning even said that you're amazing. Do you know how to play the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting? How many books have you read? Do you know how to write poems and settle accounts? Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. They thought these were impressive. Gu Yundong smiled. For some reason, the young princess in front of her felt a little terrified when she saw her smile. She was about to continue pressing when she heard Gu Yundong's cold voice. You're asking me this. It means that you know everything, right? The young princess snorted. Of course. I've been studying since I was 3 years old. I know the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. I also know how to memorize poems and calculate accounts. I've also read a lot of books. She was 6 years old this year and had studied for 3 years. She thought that her results were not bad. After all, even the headmaster praised her for being smart. Gu Yundong nodded slightly. You've read a lot of books. She seized this point and asked, if that's the case, do you know the most basic knowledge? Of course, of course. The young princess felt an inexplicable panic. However, she was a dignified princess. How could she be afraid of a bumpkin? Then let me ask you a few questions. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows and smiled. Just ask. Would she be stumped by an uneducated bumpkin? What a joke. The other children also looked arrogant, but a few older girls frowned slightly. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1379. Gu Yundong Sharp Questions. Gu Yundong thought that since they were so eager, she would not stand on ceremony. Okay, then let me ask you. Why do horses sleep standing up? Why is it usually sunny in the morning when there's dew? Why is it colder when snow melts than when it falls? Why can't the oil that's on fire be put out with water? The young princess widened her eyes. She did not know. But before she could answer, Gu Yundong's next questions followed. When you hit a snake, you hit its weak spot. Where does the weak spot refer to? What is the most precious thing in the bird's nest? What's the use of a cat's whisker? What kind of plants bloom first and then grow leaves? As soon as Gu Yundong finished speaking, there was silence. Everyone looked at her blankly. These questions were different from what they had imagined. None of them knew. The young princess was so anxious that she started to sweat. Her teacher had never taught her before, and there was no such thing in the books. How could she answer? She could only turn her head quietly and look at the maid behind her. The maidservant naturally did not know, but she did not want to show her ignorance in front of the young princess, so she immediately targeted Gu Yundong. The maidservant sneered and said, "You're quite nimble with your questions. Who can't ask these questions? But do you know the answers? You probably don't know and are specially using them to scare people, right?" The other maidservants immediately echoed, "That's right, that's right. Do you know the answers? Why should you ask someone else for an answers you don't even know?" The older ones also nodded. "You must have asked randomly." "No, she did not." Qin Anning immediately defended Gu Yundong and retorted. "My sister Gu definitely knows. She's very powerful." When the young princess heard the support of the people around her, her guilty conscience immediately disappeared. She also looked at Gu Yundong. "Tell me the answers if you have the ability." "Okay." Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows and smiled. Firstly, a horse has a big body and doesn't have sharp teeth or claws. If it lies down to sleep, once a ferocious beast attacks, it will be too late to defend or escape. Therefore, a horse has developed the habit of sleeping standing up to protect itself. Second, on a clear and cloudless night, the heat on the ground will dissipate quickly. The temperature in the field will decrease rapidly, and the ability to contain water vapor in the air will weaken. This way, the water vapor will condense on the grass, leaves, or rocks. Therefore, it's usually sunny in the morning when there's dew. 3. When the snow stops and the sky clears, there will be no clouds in the sky to block sunlight. The snow will begin to melt under the sunlight and absorb heat, so it will be colder when the snow melts. 4th, oil is lighter than water. When it burns, if you pour water into it, the water will immediately sink to the bottom of the oil. The oil will float up and flow out of the pot. Of course, the fire will burn brighter and brighter. It's best to immediately cover the pot to extinguish the oil pot fire. After Gu Yundong finished speaking, she looked at the girls in front of her who were blinking in shock. She suddenly felt that she was bullying them. She spoke faster. The 7 inches of a snake is the heart. The most precious bird's nest is the blood swallow. A cat's whisker is used to detect the width of the road. Plants like winter plums, white jasper, and elm plums bloom first before growing leaves. Buying the shell and returning the pearl is a metaphor for people who only pay attention to the appearance of things and not their substance. She said the last sentence very meaningfully. As expected, the 2 older girls instantly understood what she meant and felt a little ashamed. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1380. Not the Lady Gu Yundong looked at the other young ladies, but she was so shocked by their sparkling eyes that she took a step back. What are you doing? You really know everything, the young princess said in disbelief. None of her teachers had ever told her that. Was this woman really a bumpkin? Standing at the side, Qingyuan puffed out her chest and said proudly, I told you long ago that my sister Gu is extremely capable, but you didn't believe me. Otherwise, if you have any questions, just ask my sister Gu and she'll be able to answer them. Gu Yundong was speechless. No, I am not. You were bragging too much. Seeing that the young princess had opened her mouth and was about to ask questions, Gu Yundong hurriedly wanted to stop her. Unexpectedly, a low laugh suddenly came from behind. Gu Yundong was stunned. She turned around and saw a few people suddenly walk out of the plum forest. The woman standing at the front looked to be in her 40s. She was slightly fat, but she looked kind. Behind her were two maidservants. Just as Gu Yundong was wondering who this person was, she heard the young ladies beside her say respectfully, Marquis Madam. Marquis Madam. Gu Yundong was stunned. Was this Marquis Huiyan's wife? She stopped breathing and could not help but size her up. But then, she frowned slightly. Back then, Liangxi had said that the couple carrying Shao Qingyuan were a beautiful couple who were tall. The marquise in front of her was a little plump and not very tall. However, one could still vaguely see her youthful beauty from her face. Was she the same person from back then? The lady was also sizing up Gu Yundong. She had actually come over earlier and was attracted by the young prince's voice. This flower appreciation banquet was organized by the heir's wife and the guests were all from the younger generation, and it was fine if she did not attend. However, as the wife of the head of the family, she should greet everyone when they arrived. However, she did not expect to hear the children arguing the moment she returned. The cause was the young woman in front of her. The lady wanted to go out, but she stopped when she heard this person's voice. Then, she heard the series of questions and answers. To be honest, it was really unexpected. The marquise thought that she had read a lot of books, but she could only answer a few of these questions. It was a very strange feeling. So this was how the knowledge that was closely related to them came about. The marquise became interested in Gu Yundong. No wonder Madame Gu brought her here. It seems that Madame Shao is also a well-read person. The marquise was the first to speak. Gu Yundong smiled. I just read some miscellaneous books. As she spoke, she raised her hand and brushed her hair, revealing the silver bracelet on her wrist. The silver bracelet was really eye-catching. As expected, the marquis's gaze was fixed on it for 2 seconds. Gu Yundong observed her expression. Unfortunately, there was no fluctuation in her emotions. She could not help but feel a little disappointed. If Shao Qingyuan's background was really related to Marquis Huiyan, then the people most likely to be his parents were the marquis' wife or second madam. The marquise in front of him did not react to the silver bracelet at all. She did not look like Shao Qingyuan at all. It was very likely that it was not her. Then, what about the second madam? But just in case, Gu Yundong wanted to confirm it again. She took out a handkerchief from her sleeve and gently wiped the dirt off her fingers. If you find any errors, ads pop-up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1381. Pleasing, the handkerchief slid open, revealing the word Shao. However, the marquise still did not have any reaction. She only said, Mrs. Shao, you might have been here for a long time. Why don't you go in and have a cup of tea and snacks? Then, she said to the other children, what about you? Do you want to rest for a while before playing? Everyone looked at the young princess. The young princess nodded and then looked at Gu Yundong. Seeing that Gu Yundong was holding Qingyuan's hand, she frowned and ran to her right. She also grabbed her hand that was holding onto the handkerchief. Gu Yundong. What are you doing? What happened? The little princess blushed slightly. She did not look at Gu Yundong and deliberately said with a straight face, "Let's go." Gu Yundong looked as if she had been struck by lightning. No, young princess, you were still calling me a bumpkin just now. Don't you feel uncomfortable holding my hand? The young prefect was not upset, but Qingyuan was. She wanted her not to hold her hand. This was her sister Gu. However, looking at the marquise in front of her, she did not say anything. She only secretly glared at the young princess. On the other hand, the marquise covered her mouth and laughed softly. Others might not know, but she knew very well. The young princess was the daughter of the royal prince, Zhiyan. Zhiyan was an arrogant person, and her daughter was very doted on. In any case, with him as her father, no one could bully her. Therefore, the young prince's personality was a little free to do whatever she wanted. When she could not stand Gu Yundong, she would scold her. Now that she realized that Gu Yundong had something that she liked, she could not help but get closer to him. Others did not know if this personality was good or bad. The marquise sighed as she walked into the hall. When she turned around, she found that the children had all followed her in. Gu Yundong, who was surrounded in the middle, actually felt like the king of children. The marquise wanted to laugh for a moment. Come, sit. The marquise got someone to serve tea and snacks for the children. She then asked Gu Yundong, "What kind of books does Mrs. Shao usually read?" Did this lady have to ask this? If she said that she only read storybooks, would she lead the children beside her astray? Hence, she took a sip of water and coughed lightly. I read everything. Astronomy and geography, medical books on medicinal herbs, farms, forests, countryside, historical biographies. I read whatever I'm interested in. As she spoke, she felt a little guilty. She lowered her head and continued to drink her tea. The marquise was surprised. You really know a lot. When the other children heard this, they also tilted their heads and looked at her. So she knew so much because she had read so many books. However, they usually read poetry collections, scriptures, and memorize thousands of words. Thinking about it this way, their horizon seemed a little narrow. Gu Yundong saw that they were deep in thought and felt even more guilty. She quickly changed the topic, raised her head, and said, "By the way, it's rare to see Madam today." Yundong boldly asks for a gift from Madam. The marquise was stunned. Not only her, but the others present were also stunned. The servant girl beside the young princess secretly rolled her eyes. The country bumpkin was indeed unruly. It was her first time meeting the marquise, and the marquise had only chatted with her for a while out of respect for her, but she was actually taking advantage of her. Just wait. Just because the marquise was easy to talk to didn't mean she didn't have a temper. As expected, the smile on the marquis's face faded a little, but she still asked kindly, "What gift?" If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1382, She's so busy. Gu Yundong took out a piece of paper from his space. She handed the paper to the marquise, who was stunned. She took it and looked at it. The drawing on the paper was very vivid, and there were some words on it. It looked a little strange. This is a flyer. It was the flyer for Xuanhe Prefecture's new tea pavilion. She had left a few behind when she was drawing them previously. She didn't have time to draw them in the capital, so she took one out and used it first. Fortunately, she tore off the piece with the address and date on it. I'm working with Auntie Qin to open a milk tea shop in the capital to entertain nobles like the marquise. The food and water in the shop are relatively new. I dare say that there's nothing similar in the capital. If the marquise is free, why don't you go and take a look? It'll be very interesting. The marquise looked surprised and lowered her head to look at the leaflet in her hand. Pearl milk tea, double-skinned milk, croissants, fries, what are these? Yundong smiled mysteriously. It's delicious. Madam will know when she comes. The marquise smiled. You're still keeping it a secret. That's right. The shop hasn't opened yet. When the renovation is done, Madam should come over to take a look and you'll know what these are. When the time comes, bring old Madam, second Madam, and the heiress to experience it together. On the first day, there will be a half-price discount. The marquise was a little curious about something she had never heard or seen before. Especially since the flyers seemed to be very tempting. She did not go out often, but it was fine for her to go occasionally. Moreover, this was a collaboration between Gu Yundong and Mrs. Qin. Even if it was for the sake of the Gu family, it was fine to make a trip. However, it's fine with old Madam. She doesn't like to move now and doesn't like to join in the fun. His second aunt can go and take a look. I'll call her later. Alright, then I'll send a post to Madam. Madam, you can't refuse. Of course not. Gu Yundong was slightly satisfied. Although she had not seen second Madam today, she would find an opportunity. Seeing that they were almost done talking, the young princess quickly said, I'll go too. You can also give me an invitation. Gu Yundong lowered her head and thought for a moment. She naturally felt that she could not let go of the opportunity in front of him. Alright, but you need an elder to take care of you. No problem. I'll still ask my cousin to bring me. Today, the young princess came to the Marquis mansion because her cousin had brought her over. After Gu Yundong finished speaking, she saw that the Marquise looked a little tired. She quickly got up and bade farewell, taking the children with her. When she went out, she realized that Madame Gu was looking for her outside. Gu Yundong hurriedly led Qin Anning over. Unexpectedly, after taking a few steps, she realized that the young princess had also followed her. Gu Yundong was speechless. She stopped in her tracks and looked at the little girl strangely. Only then did the little princess react. She blushed and snorted. I just want to remind you not to forget to send it to me when the time comes. After a pause, she continued, I will also invite you. Tell me the address and I will treat you on my birthday. There's no need, right? A trace of fear flashed across Gu Yundong's face. She did not want to go to the Marquis mansion. That kind of place was restricted. She had to smile and bow when she saw someone. It was easy for something to happen, okay? Besides, she was actually very, very busy, really busy. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1383. What a coincidence. Seeing that she did not speak for a long time, the little princess became anxious. Why aren't you saying anything? Don't you want to come? Gu Yundong had a headache and could only say, Princess, you heard it just now. I'm opening a shop. Then I'm very, very busy. I might not have time. How busy can a shop be? Can't you just keep the door open? Gu Yundong was speechless. She wanted to cry. The corners of her mouth twitched and she said, Of course it's not that simple. Look, when I open a shop, I first have to renovate the shop and recruit workers. When the workers are found, I have to teach them how to work and entertain customers. Later, I have to get ready for the opening event, prepare ingredients, and attract customers. Sometimes, I have to deal with others who come to find trouble with me. Things are piling up. I'm really too busy. The little princess' eyes widened as she listened. So it's so complicated. You're amazing. You actually know everything. The young lady behind her also nodded in agreement. They had no choice. At first, they thought that opening a shop was very simple. After all, their shops were all managed by the shopkeepers. The little princess was a little disappointed, but seeing that Yundong was so tired, it seemed a little unreasonable to send an invitation to her. She could only nod reluctantly. All right, then I won't invite you, but remember to invite me. All right. Yundong nodded and agreed without hesitation. Only then did the little princess smile. However, the maid standing behind her rolled her eyes and lowered her eyes without saying anything. Yundong stood up and brought Qingyuan to meet up with the Gu family. She followed Madame Gu to greet the other madams and young ladies. After staying in the Marquis mansion for a while, she stood up and left. After leaving the Marquis mansion, Madame Gu carried a Ning into the carriage and asked, "How is it?" Yundong sighed and shook his head. The Marquise didn't seem to have any reaction when she saw the bracelet or the handkerchief. Madame Gu frowned. Could we have gone in the wrong direction? I've never heard of anyone losing a child in the Marquis mansion. I don't know either. It's just that this is the only clue at the moment. We can only look for it in the Marquis mansion first. If it's not relevant, we can look in other directions, Yundong said. Let's try second madam another day. Madame Gu patted her hand. There's no hurry. We've waited for so many years. Now that we have a clue, we'll find it eventually. Okay. Yundong nodded. Send Anning back first. I think she's a little sleepy. I'll wait for Brother Shao. All right, then I'll take my leave first. If there's anything, you can come to my residence to look for me. There's no need for any invitations. I'll tell the door guard. Okay. Madame Gu asked the maidservant to help her into the carriage. Yundong and Tong Shuetao watched their carriage get further and further away until it disappeared around the corner. Then she turned around. She did not know when Shao Qingyuan had appeared behind her, but what surprised Yundong was that he was holding 2 boxes. Yundong looked at the 2 boxes in confusion. This is. During the time you were in the Marquis mansion, I got 2 herbs. They were written in the medical book that Song de Zhiyan gave me. Yundong's eyes widened. I've only been in the residence for a short while, and you've already gotten 2 precious herbs. Those were the herbs recorded in Song de Zhiyang's medical books. Shao Qingyuan handed the box to Shao Wen, who was leading the carriage over. He smiled and said, "It was just a coincidence." Wasn't that too much of a coincidence? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1384, Bad Feeling. Yundong remembered that in the medical book Song de Zhiyan had given her, there were about 50 kinds of precious herbs. In less than 2 years, Shao Qingyuan had already found more than 30 types. Yundong felt that he might have a buff that attracted medicinal herbs. Otherwise, how could it be so easy for him to find a medicinal herb that others might not be able to find even after working hard for their entire lives? Perhaps he was born to walk the path of a medicinal herb merchant. Yundong could not help but sigh. Shao Qingyuan helped her into the carriage. The carriage drove all the way to Hetai Alley. Yundong took the opportunity to tell him everything that had happened in the Marquis mansion. When Shao Qingyuan heard this, he was silent for a moment. He grabbed her hand and said, "It's fine. There's no hurry. It's only the first day." Yeah. As they spoke, the carriage entered the alley and stopped in front of the Shao family's house. Unexpectedly, just as the carriage stopped and before she could get out, the door of the house next door opened and Mrs. Yu ran over. "Is Sister Yundong back?" "Yes, sister-in-law." "What's the matter?" Gu Yundong lifted the curtain and alighted from the carriage. Mrs. Yu had already run up to them and said in a hurry, "Io, where did you go? Why are you only back now? Let me tell you, when you left this morning, someone rushed over to look for you and said that he had something to tell you. There's no one here. I heard that they even went to your shop to look for you." Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan were stunned at the same time. They looked at each other and asked, "Sister-in-law Yu, did you ask who was looking for us?" "I asked. He said his surname is Song." "You two know each other?" "Song Dejiang. You should know each other, right? He's a little old and so tall. He came in a carriage. He looked so anxious as if someone was going to die. Mrs. Yu said, he asked me to wait for you to come back and tell you that it's an urgent matter." A bad feeling flashed across Shao Qingyuan's heart. "Let's go to the Song residence." Gu Yundong quickly turned to Mrs. Yu and said, "We understand. Well, go over and take a look now." "Thank you." With that, she got into the carriage with Shao Qingyuan. Shao Wen, who was about to open the door and remove the threshold, locked it again and sat in the shaft with Tong Shui Tao. Mrs. Yu waved her hand and watched their carriage leave the alley. Gu Yundong did not know what had happened to Song Dejiang or why he was in such a hurry. Her intuition told her that it might have something to do with Muzi. The carriage quickly stopped at the entrance of the Song residence. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan alighted from the carriage and the concierge recognized Shao Qingyuan. He quickly went up to them. "Young Master Shao, you're here." "Yes, why is Imperial Physician Song looking for us?" The gatekeeper's eyes avoided them. He sighed and said, "You'll know when you come in." Then, he hurriedly led the way. Gu Yundong had not been to the Song residence before today. She had her own matters to attend to. It was her first time here today, but she did not have any curiosity for admiration. The two of them walked all the way to the central room before the same urgent footsteps came from inside. Then, Gu Yundong saw Song Dejiang, whose clothes were disheveled, whose hair was tangled, and whose head was covered in sweat. Song Dejiang was slightly stunned when he saw them. His fingers that were hanging by his side trembled slightly. Gu Yundong took a few steps forward. "Imperial Physician Song, what's wrong?" However, Song Dejiang was too ashamed to see their expressions. He raised his hand and wiped his face ruthlessly. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1385, I used by Muzi. Then, Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan saw the blood on his face. "You," Song Dejiang choked. "Yundong, I've let you down." "What happened?" Song Dejiang raised his head. His eyes were bloodshot, and it was difficult for him to speak. After a long while, he said with difficulty, "Muzi is gone." Gu Yundong felt her head explode. He was stunned for a moment and could not help but take a step back. However, Shao Qingyuan suddenly stepped forward and grabbed Song Dejiang's clothes. "What do you mean? What do you mean by Muzi is gone?" Cough, cough. Song Dejiang coughed uncomfortably. The servant beside him hurriedly came up to grab Shao Qingyuan's hand. "Young Master Shao, calm down and listen to old master first." Shao Qingyuan pushed the servant away and stared at Song Dejiang sharply. "Tell me." Even though Song Dejiang was feeling a little uncomfortable, he still said, "My martial nephew's old illness had relapsed, and he needed Muzi to save his life. I have no choice. I only had one stock with me, so I gave it to him to use first. I originally went to look for you to get your approval. Ahem, but you weren't around. My martial nephew couldn't wait any longer, so I could only." Song Dejiang also felt very guilty. Other people's things were equally important to them. He had used them without permission, but he had no choice. He could not watch his martial nephew die just like that. He had no choice. Song Zhiyan closed his eyes. I know that I didn't do this right. I've let you down. If you want to beat or scold me, it's up to you. I'll accept it. Shao Qingyuan suddenly clenched his fists and raised them high in the next moment. The servant beside him hurriedly rushed forward to stop him. Young Master Shao, don't be rash. Master is old. If you punch him, he will lose his life. Get lost. The servant did not dare to let go. Not only was young Master Shao strong, but he was also a martial artist. He turned his head and happened to see Yundong. He hurriedly shouted, young Master Shao, look at your wife. At the mention of Yundong, Shao Qingyuan finally calmed down. He let go of Song Zhiyan and turned to see Yundong lowering his head in a daze. Shao Qingyuan quickly hugged her. Yundong, it's fine. If it's gone, well, look for it. We'll find it eventually. Yundong's mind was in a mess. She had listened to Song Zhiyang's words. However, she did not know what to do. It was not easy for her to obtain by Muzi. It had only been a few days, and he was gone just like that. Should he give Song Zhiyang a beating? So what if he did? By Muzi would not be able to return. Yundong had a headache. He frowned in pain and his face turned pale. Shao Qingyuan quickly picked her up and rushed to the guest room. Song Zhiyan was still standing at the same spot. As he watched the two of them walk away, his legs seemed to be filled with lead and he could not move. His body was still in a mess and he looked very disheveled. Previously, when he was treating his martial nephew, he was also fully focused and did not dare to slack off at all, afraid that his martial nephew's life would be lost in his hands. Now, she actually felt her legs go weak and she slid to the ground. The servant at the side quickly supported him and sat him on a chair at the side. Master. Song Zhiyan waved his hand. I'm fine. He pointed in the direction where Shao Qingyuan had left. Follow them and see if they need anything. Yes. After the servant left, Song Zhiyan wiped his face again. The blood on his hand had already dried up, and his nose was filled with the smell of blood. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1386, Her mother has been waiting for a long time. Shao Qingyuan carried Yundong and kicked open the door. After placing her on the bed, he frowned and looked at her worriedly. What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? I'm fine. I just feel a little uncomfortable. Yundong buried her head in his arms and said in a muffled voice, Why is it gone? It wasn't easy for us to get by Muzi, but it's gone just like that. It's okay. Well, look again. Yundong hugged him tightly. We've been searching for nearly 2 years. It wasn't easy to find such a stock. I don't know how many more years it will take to find it. Her mother had been waiting for a long time. Yundong hugged Shao Qingyuan even tighter. I really want to beat Song Zhiyan up. I'll beat him. After Shao Qingyuan finished speaking, he realized that Yundong's grip on his waist had tightened. He sighed slightly and hugged her on his lap. If it's really uncomfortable, cry. I'll be here. I'll watch over you. I am. Yundong had always been strong and rarely cried. However, at this moment, she felt her eyes sting. It was very difficult to find that by Muzi. Shao Qingyuan almost gave up his life for this medicine. He almost became someone's slave. He ran away for a clue. He had put in a lot of effort. It was not easy for him to find by Muzi. In the future, he would not secretly take risks without telling her. But now, they were back to square one. Her mother still had to wait. She had just had some hope, but it was gone. I'll write a letter later and ask my parents not to come. Her negative emotions reached their peak in an instant. Father and mother would be so disappointed. Shao Qingyuan took a deep breath and lowered his head to kiss her face. I'll write it. They won't blame you. Yes, Yundong replied softly. Then, she closed her eyes and leaned into his arms without making another sound. Shao Qingyuan gently stroked her back until he felt her breathing gradually calm down. Then, he hugged her and lay down. Seeing this, the servant at the door quietly closed the door. He exhaled and left quietly. When he returned to the main courtyard, Song Dejiang had already stood up. In the end, he went to wash his face, but his body was still messy. The servant reported, "Young Master Shao and Madam are resting in the guest room." Song Dejiang paused and nodded. "Get Shao Wan and the rest to come in too. Arrange for them in the room next door." Then, he went in to see his martial nephew. The guy was still unconscious, but his expression was slightly better. Song Dejiang sighed and asked the medicine boy to continue guarding the room while he returned to his room to rest. He had been tense since early in the morning. He was old, and after such a rescue, he felt like the world was spinning when he came back to his senses. However, he really could not fall asleep on the bed. It was not until the sky was about to darken that he slowly fell asleep. The next day, Song Dejiang woke up early. He went to see his martial nephew first, who was still unconscious. However, he took her pulse. Her pulse had stabilized and she was fine. Even his old illness had been treated, so it would not relapse. Song Dejiang heaved a sigh of relief. After seeing them, he went to the courtyard and asked the servants, "Where are Shao Qingyuan and the rest?" "They're not up yet." After hearing this, Song Dejiang was silent for a while. "I'm going to check on them," he said, and strode off toward the guest room. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1387, Martial Nephew by Zhiyan. Unexpectedly, after taking a few steps, Shao Qingyuan and Yundong arrived together. Song Dejiang paused for a moment before stepping forward with a serious expression. "I'm very sorry about Muzi. Yundong waved her hand. "That's it. You've already used it. No matter what you say, it won't be able to come back. Moreover, he's your martial nephew. Coincidentally, his life was in your hands. Such a choice is inevitable. Girl." Yundong was a little tired. She took a deep breath. "Anyway, you owe me one." "I know. But I also owed you in the past," Yundong said immediately. Song Dejiang was stunned. Yundong smiled bitterly. "We can't settle this score. Anyway, I'll continue to look for Muzi. The next time I find it, I won't hand it over to you first. Also, you have to save my mother." "All right." Song Dejiang did not know what to say. After a long time, he said one word. "I'm hungry. Let's eat first." Song Dejiang hurriedly got someone to serve the food. The three people eating in the reception pavilion were very quiet. No one spoke again. This kind of thing seemed to be unnecessary. Until a servant came to report, "Old master, young master Bai is awake." Song Dejiang was stunned. He threw down his chopsticks and hurriedly ran away. Yundong pinched herself gently. "Young Master Bai. What's wrong?" Shao Qingyuan wiped her hands. When Song Dejiang threw down his chopsticks just now, the porridge had splashed on the back of Yundong's hand. Yundong suddenly said, "Bai. Could young Master Bai be Bai Yang?" "Yes, Bai Yang's grandfather is Song Dejiang's master." "It can't be." Gu Yundong could not be bothered to eat and hurried over to take a look. If it was really that little guy. However, when she saw the person lying on the bed, Gu Yundong finally came to her senses. It was not Bai Yang. Yes, Song Dejiang knew that she knew Bai Yang. If it was him, Song Dejiang would have told her. But this person looked familiar to Gu Yundong. Bai Zhiyan also saw them. His pale lips twitched as he said, "Martial uncle has already told me. I'm sorry, I used your Bai Muzi and couldn't tell you in advance." Gu Yundong did not know what to say. Song Dejiang introduced, "This is Shao Qingyuan, this is Gu Yundong, the sister Gu that Bai Yang had seen before. Back in Qingyuan Prefecture, she was the one who saved Bai Yang from the human traffickers." When Bai Zhiyan heard this, he immediately wanted to get up. Song Dejiang hurriedly held him down. "It's not appropriate for you to move too much now." Bai Zhiyan could only give up and lie back down. However, he still said gratefully to Gu Yundong, "Mrs. Shao is the Bai family's great benefactor. You saved Bai Yang, and the medicine I used to treat his illness is yours. I really can't thank you enough." Gu Yundong remembered. Wasn't this the brother Bai that Bai Yang was talking about? Gu Yundong felt that every time she met him, he seemed to be terminally ill. Was he that miserable? For some reason, she actually felt some sympathy for him. However, Gu Yundong still said, "Since you're a member of the Bai family, I heard from Bai Yang that the Bai family has 2 Bai Muses, right? If you're grateful, give me one later." "Of course. As long as we find the key to the jade door and open it, Bai Muzi will not be the only thing. There will also be a huge reward," Bai Zhiyan said solemnly. He could still make the decision to return Bai Muzi to Gu Yundong. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1388, Who is Gao Feng looking for? Gu Yundong was slightly satisfied. Seeing how tired he looked, she did not want to disturb his rest. "All right, then we'll leave first. Have a good rest. When I recover, I'll definitely visit again to thank you." Gu Yundong nodded. He was really polite. She and Shao Qingyuan walked out. Seeing that Song Dejiang had followed them out, she simply asked him for a messenger pigeon. Then, she borrowed a brush and paper to write to Gu Dajiang and tell him about Bai Muzi. Gu Yundong held the brush for a long time but did not know how to write. In the end, Shao Qingyuan took it. "Didn't I say that I would write it?" Shao Qingyuan was much faster at writing. He had always been good at keeping things short, so he finished it in no time. Then, he stuffed it into the small bamboo tube on the messenger pigeon's leg and let it out. Song Dejiang's messenger pigeon was used to exchange medical books with him. It was just useful. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief after the letter was sent out. Her parents should not have set off yet. It was not too late to tell them. Song Dejiang saw that Gu Yundong was still listless. He thought about it and went into the house to take out 2 herbs. "This is to compensate you." Gu Yundong did not know him, but Shao Qingyuan narrowed his eyes slightly. These herbs were the herbs in Song Dejiang's medical books. They were very precious. "You're really giving them to us?" Song Dejiang nodded. Although he was a little reluctant, he had done something wrong in the first place. It would not make sense if he did not compensate him. Seeing this, Gu Yundong understood something. She paused and returned one of the medicinal herbs. "1 stalk for 1 stalk. There's no need to give more. I'll take this." Song Dejiang looked down and sighed inwardly. Although he was exchanging 1 stalk for another, the one he used was extremely precious to Gu Yundong. It was exceptionally different. But when she said that, Song Dejiang still took it back. Shao Qingyuan put away the remaining one and the 2 of them were about to leave. At this moment, the medicine boy rushed over and said that Zhiyan's body temperature had risen again, and he asked Song Dejiang to hurry over and take a look. Song Dejiang hurried inside. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan were about to leave, but they stopped when they heard this. After all, the man had used by Muzi, so they had to show some concern. Therefore, the two of them returned to their rooms. Song Dejiang felt Zhiyan's pulse again and heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, this was a normal phenomenon. He turned around and saw Shao Qingyuan enter. He paused and looked at him, then at Zhiyan. Suddenly, he said, "Come and take his pulse." Shao Qingyuan frowned slightly, but Zhiyan understood. He immediately smiled and said, "This is a rare opportunity to learn. It's not easy to encounter my illness. Let's give it a try." Gu Yundong pushed him. Only then did Shao Qingyuan step forward and place his hand on his wrist. Zhiyan looked at him for a moment and said, "I heard from Uncle Master that you're very talented in medicine." Cough, cough. If Gao Feng finds the key in the future and opens the jade door, there will be many lost books inside. You can take a look. Shao Qingyuan nodded and continued to take the pulse. Gu Yundong found it strange. Isn't Gao Feng looking for someone? He's looking for someone and the key. The key is with that person. As long as we find the person, we will naturally find the key. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. Last time, Brother Shao met Gao Feng. I think he went to the Xuanhe Prefecture. Who is he looking for? We live in the Xuanhe Prefecture. We might be able to help. Yes, there was strength in numbers. If they help find the person, they would have the key. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1389, Gao Feng is looking for me. Zhiyan thought for a moment. It wasn't that he couldn't say it. Moreover, Gu Yundong was right. She was familiar with the Xuanhe Prefecture. It might be helpful. Therefore, Zhiyan sighed and said, Gao Feng is looking for a woman. Unfortunately, we don't know her name, age, or address. We only know that 2 years ago, she was about this tall. When he saw Shao Qingyuan retract his hand that was taking his pulse, he raised his hand to indicate the height. Gu Yundong frowned. He did not know her name. With her height from 2 years ago, it was really difficult to find her like this. Then where did he meet that woman? What did they say? What did they do? Gu Yundong asked again. Zhiyan said, although that woman was young, her skills were very good. The biggest clue is that she had a crossbow on her. It's a very exquisite crossbow. Gu Yundong was stunned. A strange look flashed across her face. Shao Qingyuan also looked up at her. The two of them looked at each other and fell silent. Zhiyan continued, at that time, we saw it on the way to escape from the wilderness. It was on the road between Yongning Prefecture and Qingyuan Prefecture. At that time, we encountered 2 bastards who wanted to take advantage of the night to harm Bai Yang and Bai Yu. That girl suddenly appeared and helped to deal with one of them with a crossbow. The other was dealt with by Gao Feng. That girl said that she realized that those 2 people had ill intentions, so she attacked. Gu Yundong widened her eyes in disbelief and looked at Zhiyan in shock. She suspected that she had heard wrongly. On the other hand, Song Dejiang, who was at the side, asked in surprise, the girl Gao Feng is looking for met him on the way to escape. I remember that the Gu girl also escaped from the Yongning Prefecture. Zhiyan was stunned and suddenly looked at Gu Yundong. The latter gulped. After a while, she asked uncertainly, after that, Gao Feng even gave that girl a bag of steamed buns and pancakes. Not long after the girl left, a carriage came into the village. You guys, left in the middle of the night. Bai Zhiyan's breathing suddenly stopped, and he suddenly wanted to sit up. However, he got up too quickly and felt dizzy. He fell back hard. Fortunately, Shao Qingyuan was sitting on the edge of the bed. He quickly reached out to support her. Song Dejiang said anxiously, "Don't be agitated. Hurry up and lie down. Let's talk slowly." Bai Zhiyan took a while to calm down and suppress the pain. He closed his eyes and turned his head slightly. He looked straight at Yundong. If I'm right, then, this person is me." Yundong took a deep breath. She also felt that it was a little magical. She had always known that Feng was looking for someone. The last time she met Bai Yang in Qingyuan Prefecture, she had almost met Feng. In the end, due to a freak combination of factors, Feng left Qingyuan Prefecture early. Later on the way to find his uncle, Shao Qingyuan also met Feng. At that time, they had just come out of the Shuanhe Prefecture, and Feng was on his way to the Shuanhe Prefecture. He had also missed her. Bai Zhiyan stared fixedly at Yundong. His breathing quickened slightly. "Yes, you're right. Feng gave that girl a bag of steamed buns. We also left Tonggu village overnight." "Was it really you?" "I don't know the name of the village, but I did experience this before. That was the first time I saw Feng." Yundong paused and suddenly frowned. "But you said that Feng was looking for someone for the key, but I don't know what key it is." "Back then, I didn't. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1390, Jade Key. Yundong suddenly stopped mid-sentence. She thought for a moment and asked, "The key to the jade door you mentioned, could it be a jade pendant?" Bai Zhiyan and Song Dejiang smiled in surprise. "Yes, it's a jade pendant." "Is it really with you?" "I do have one, but I found the jade pendant from the 2 refugees." Speaking of which, Yundong had almost forgotten about the jade pendant. She had kept it in her interspace back then. Now, she probably had to search carefully. She did not know where it was. That's right. It's on those 2 refugees." Bai Zhiyan became a little excited. That jade pendant was on Bai Yang at that time. The refugees had come into contact with Bai Yang. They must have stolen the jade pendant at that time. That night, he was injured and suddenly had a high fever. He was in a daze. And there was only Feng by his side. He had to take care of himself and Bai Yang and Bai Yu. Actually, Feng already knew when the 2 people entered the courtyard. It was just that he had to take care of Feng, so he couldn't go out in time. In the end, one of them sneaked in and bumped into Bai Yang. That person wanted to carry Bai Yang away on the spot. It was Feng who saved Bai Yang in time, but who knew that in that instant, the jade pendant hanging around Bai Yang's neck would be cut off and taken away by him. The room was dark, so Feng couldn't see clearly. After saving Bai Yang, he let him stay with Bai Yu while he turned around to deal with the refugee and forced the guy into the courtyard step by step. Unexpectedly, the other one outside had already been killed. It was just a chance meeting. There was no need for Feng to ask for her name. However, no matter what, she had helped him deal with someone. Although he could handle it alone, it did give him less pressure. Feng saw that this girl was thin and looked like a refugee, so he simply took the pancakes and steamed buns to express his gratitude. As for the 2 dead people's belongings that the girl had looted behind them, he did not care. Unexpectedly, the jade pendant entered this girl's pocket just like that. Feng only realized that Bai Yang's jade pendant was missing a day after the carriage drove. However, when he looked back at that time, how could he find her in the vast sea of people? Especially when he didn't even know her name and age or who was around her. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. However, this person was right in front of him. Zhiyan slowly closed his eyes. He didn't even know what to say. Fate in this world was so wonderful. He looked at Yundong. Then, where is the jade pendant? It's... Yundong was about to say that she had it with her, but then she realized that something was wrong. Who would carry an unfamiliar jade pendant that they had found on a refugee with them? It was not like she did not have the money to buy one. Hence, Yundong changed her tone and said, "At home." "Which home?" "At the Hittite alley in the capital, but I have to find it. I remember that when I packed my things, I put everything in a box. I don't know if I remember wrongly." Zhiyan hurriedly became excited. "Then quickly look for it." Yundong immediately nodded. "All right, I'll go back now." In fact, how could she not be excited? If that jade pendant was really the key, she would be able to obtain by Muzi very soon. This sudden surprise made her a little impatient. Qingyuan also stood up and said to the two of them, "Then we'll go back first. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1391, Where is your home? Seeing the two of them walk further and further away, Song Dejiang heaved a sigh of relief. It's rare that the jade pendant is still there. Yes. Zhiyan also felt relieved. He had talked to Feng before. Even if they found him, the jade pendant might not still be in her hands. After all, she was fleeing at that time. She might not have any silver on her along the way. Otherwise, why would she search for dead people's things? When she really could not survive, she might have pawned the jade pendant or sold it. At that time, it would be extremely difficult to find it again. However, Feng had also said that the girl seemed to be quite capable at that time. She had such an exquisite crossbow on her, so she might not be desperate enough to become a jade pendant. Fortunately, the jade pendant was still there. Yundong and Qingyuan did not even bring Tong Shuitao with them. They drove the carriage back to Hittite alley. Mrs. Yu, who was at the door, was about to greet them when she saw them return. Unexpectedly, Yundong jumped down from the carriage and rushed into the courtyard. On the other hand, Qingyuan was still standing beside the carriage. However, Mrs. Yu was a little afraid of him. In the end, she did not greet him and only stuck her head out to look at the courtyard next door. Sure enough, Yundong came out after a while. When she saw Mrs. Yu, she waved her hand. "Hello, sister-in-law." "Hello, hello," then she watched helplessly as the carriage moved off again. "Why are you in such a hurry? What happened?" She shook her head and returned to her courtyard. Yundong sat in the carriage, holding the jade pendant in her hand. She did not speak for a long time. After a long time, she lifted the curtain and looked at Qingyuan on the shaft. She pursed her lips and hesitated. Qingyuan turned to look at her and suddenly smiled. "Let's talk about it when you want to." Yundong lowered her head slightly. Others might not know if the jade pendant was in the box, but as the person beside her, how could Qingyuan not know? When they came to the capital, they didn't bring many things with them. Who would bring such an insignificant jade pendant? Yundong had almost forgotten where it was. She had rummaged through her space for a long time before finding it. Actually, she knew that Brother Shao had long suspected her. She had already made it very obvious several times in front of him. How could a smart person like him not feel anything? However, he did not ask anything. Perhaps he already had a guess in his heart, but he was not sure. Yundong scratched her head. It was not that she did not want to say it, but she just did not know how to say it. However, this person seemed to be very indulgent towards her. "All right, sit back down. Be careful not to fall." Shao Qingyuan pushed her inside and let her sit in the carriage. Yundong was a little discouraged and rubbed her face hard. The carriage returned to the Song mansion not long after. The two of them strode towards the main courtyard. Bai Zhiyan and Song Dejiang were getting anxious. Seeing the two of them enter, Bai Zhiyan immediately looked at their hands expectantly. Yundong quickly took out the jade pendant. Is this it? Bai Zhiyan took it. At this moment, he was already supported by Song Dejiang to sit at the head of the bed. At first glance, his eyes lit up. Yes, this is it. This is the jade key to the jade door. Really? Yundong finally felt relieved. She asked anxiously, then let's quickly take the jade pendant and open the jade door to find Bai Muzi. Where is your house? When are we going? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1392, It's important to find your parents free. As soon as Yundong finished speaking, Bai Zhiyan and Song Dejiang were stunned. They looked at each other. The atmosphere instantly became a little strange, and neither Bai Zhiyan nor the other spoke. Shao Qingyuan narrowed his eyes and suddenly reached out to take the jade pendant from Bai Zhiyan's hand. Ah! Bai Zhiyan only felt that the jade pendant was gone. Shao Qingyuan looked at Song Dejiang. Why? Are you going back on your word? Of course not. Song Dejiang hurriedly shook his head and explained, the Bai family is in the Lingzhou prefecture, but the Bai family has always been isolated from the world. Outsiders don't know where they are. If you want to enter the Bai family, you need someone from the main family to lead the way. Otherwise, you will get lost. Yundong frowned, and Bai Zhiyan sighed. There are too few people who can enter the Bai family. I can enter, and so can Uncle Master Song. But I can't travel now, and Uncle Master can't leave the capital. I'm afraid I won't be able to go to Lingzhou prefecture for a while. Spiritual State Prefecture. Yundong frowned. What about Gao Feng? Gao Feng is in Xuanhe prefecture now. I don't know his exact location, so I can only send a letter to Xuanhe prefecture's Huimin Medical Center first. After Gao Feng reads the letter, he will rush back. Bai Zhiyan knew that she was anxious, but he still said, why don't you wait a little longer? At most, a month. When I recover, I will personally bring you to the Bai family. Although the Bai family had never allowed outsiders to enter, Shao Qingyuan and his wife had done the Bai family a great favor. Be it saving Bai Yang or using their Bai Muzi, the Bai family would remember this favor and compensate them. Bai Zhiyan looked at Shao Qingyuan. This man was very talented. If he could receive guidance from his grandfather, it would be the best repayment. Yundong was silent for a moment before finally nodding. Okay. She glanced at the jade pendant in Shao Qingyuan's hand. But this jade pendant is temporarily in our custody. Although Bai Zhiyan felt that it was inappropriate, he also knew that Yundong no longer trusted them because of Bai Muzi. Hence, he finally nodded and said, this jade pendant is now the only key to the jade door. If it's gone, then Bai Muzi. Don't worry, I care about Bai Muzi more than you do. Therefore, I will definitely take good care of this jade pendant. I definitely won't lose it. That's good. Bai Zhiyan looked at the jade pendant reluctantly and finally retracted his gaze. He was a little tired. The fluctuation of emotions just now made his body temperature rise again. Yundong hoped that he would recover as soon as possible, so she immediately pulled Shao Qingyuan away. The two of them left the Song residence and got into the carriage. Shao Qingyuan asked her, aren't you in a hurry? Yundong smiled. Of course I'm in a hurry. But as you said, we have to do things one by one. Since we're in the capital, we should settle the things here first. It's very important to find your parents. Shao Qingyuan reached out and hugged her. "I'm fine. But I'm related." Gu Yundong actually knew that ever since Shao Qingyuan realized that his parents doted on him, his emotions had been a little unstable. Although he did not say anything, he yearned for it in his heart. Shao Qingyuan sighed slightly and hugged her even tighter. When they got home, Gu Yundong put the jade pendant away and hid it back in her space. Since they were going to the prefecture of Spirit State after Zhiyan recovered from his illness, they had to move faster in the capital. The renovation of the shop was handed over to Carpenter Pang and his disciple. Gu Yundong did not know how it was going, but he planned to go and take a look tomorrow. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1393, Recruiting Next. It was time to recruit. Gu Yundong felt a headache coming on when he thought of the female shopkeeper he needed. Unexpectedly, Shao Qingyuan said, "It's actually not difficult to find a female shopkeeper who's literate and knows the rules while facing the madams and misses of the aristocratic families." Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. "You have a candidate. There are many grannies from the palace who leave the palace to retire when they're old. Actually, they're very good at this." Gu Yundong was stunned. Yes, Madame Qiu of Xuanhe Manor. Although she was not from the palace, she was still a nanny. Some of the grannies in the palace used to serve nobles. Those who could survive until they left the palace were all slick people. Except, where can I find a nanny like that? Qin residence. Gu Yundong was puzzled. It was obvious that Shao Qingyuan knew more about this. When the emperor rewarded Qin Wenzheng's residence, he also bestowed servants to the Qin residence. One of them was a nanny. Yes, I heard about it when I was in the palace. Since there was a nanny in the Qin residence, she must have known a nanny who had left the palace. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. She planned to visit the Qin family tomorrow after going to the shop. In addition to this, they also wanted to buy people. Not only in the shop, but also at home. There were only the four of them at home now. Gu Yundong usually brought Tong Shuidao along when she went out, and Shao Qingyuan would also bring Shao Wen along. There was always a need for an old maid or a guard at home. The next time they encountered a situation where Song Dejiang came to look for them but couldn't find them, someone would come to inform them. She had been busy for the past few days. Now, it was time to organize it. The next day, Gu Yundong brought Tong Shuitao to the shop to check on the situation. Shao Qingyuan and Shao Wen went to the brokers. When he arrived at the shop, he saw Carpenter Pang busying himself with his two disciples. The counter was already done, and more than half of the tables and stools in the shop in front had been made. Gu Yundong touched them. They were very sturdy and did not hurt. Indeed, the quality was good. Carpenter Pang wiped his sweat and came over. "Boss, I've already found a craftsman to remove the two walls in the backyard yesterday. They're being repaired now. Do you want to take a look?" "Let's go take a look." Gu Yundong immediately went to the backyard. The craftsman was hired by Carpenter Pang. Gu Yundong handed over the renovation to him. It was up to him to find any helpers. The backyard was a little chaotic. Gu Yundong walked around and came back, letting them continue with their work. Then, he took a brush and paper and started writing. Carpenter Pang was puzzled. "Boss, do you think there's anything else that needs to be changed?" "Oh, no, I'm just writing a recruitment notice and posting it outside. I plan to recruit a few female workers. Isn't the shop in need of manpower?" Although they had to buy people, it was impossible for all the employees in the shop to be bought. As long as it was one of their own in the kitchen, the waiters in the hall could be found outside. Female workers. Carpenter Pang thought for a moment and suddenly asked, "Do you have any requirements?" Clean and tidy. It's best if the person who likes to smile and is slightly tall. She has a gentle personality and is hardworking. She also has to be literate. With this calculation, it seemed like she had a lot of requirements. Carpenter Pang was also surprised. This request was more than just a lot. It would probably be difficult to find someone who could read. But Gu Yundong still wrote the notice and pasted it at the door. Before she left, she instructed Carpenter Pang, "If anyone comes to inquire, help me introduce the shop." "Alright, boss." Gu Yundong left. As soon as she left, someone who had been staring at the shop came forward and squinted at the words written on the notice. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1394. The shop recruits different workers. After reading the notice carefully from top to bottom, the person knew what to do and turned to leave. Carpenter Pang originally wanted to come out and ask, but he didn't expect to only see his back. That person quickly left Jinlong Street. Not long after, he appeared in a restaurant. He looked left and right. When he saw the person in the corner, he hurriedly ran over. "Young master, there's a situation in the shop on Jinlong Street." Tang Qijing was eating. When he heard this, he quickly swallowed the fish in his mouth and took a sip of water. He asked, "What's the situation?" "Then the shop is going to recruit." Tang Qijing frowned when he heard that. He was a little disinterested. "So be it. What's so strange about that? Since Shao Qingyuan's shop is about to open, isn't it normal to find a couple of assistants? I want you to keep an eye on Shao Qingyuan. You don't have to report these unimportant matters to me." "No, young master, that shop hires different workers." "Different in what way?" "Shao Qingyuan's shop hires female shop assistants." The servant couldn't help but raise his voice. "What? What?" However, two puzzled voices followed. Not only Tang Qijing, but there was also a familiar voice behind. Tang Qijing was stunned and looked up. When he saw who it was, he hurriedly stood up and almost knocked over the chair behind him. However, he couldn't care less. A smile instantly appeared on his face as he said obsequiously, "Your Highness, why are you here?" He silently glanced at him. "If you can be here, can't I be here too?" Tang Qijing shook his head again and again. "Of course you can. You can go anywhere in the capital, sir." Yi Silent snorted and quickly averted his gaze to look at the servant standing behind Tang Qijing. "You, repeat what you said just now." The servant trembled and was a little confused. What did he just say? Oh, right. He remembered. He immediately repeated the last sentence. That waiter hired by Shao Qingyuan's shop is a female waiter. Yi Silent narrowed his eyes. Shao Qingyuan. Shao Qingyuan came to the capital? Tang Qijing replied softly, "Yes, I think so." Yi Silent's dissatisfied gaze instantly landed on him. When did this happen? Why didn't you tell me? However, the imperial physicians outside had been coming back one after another recently. He just didn't pay attention to them. A few days ago, a troupe came to his house, and the scenes they played were quite novel, so he had been staying at home for the past few days to have fun. He didn't expect to miss news of Shao Qingyuan. Tang Qijing groaned inwardly. Your Highness, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but I'm not sure if this person is the same Shao Qingyuan from back then. That's why I got someone to keep an eye on his shop and confirm his identity first before reporting to your Highness. To be honest, he really did not intend to report it to the royal prince. Yi Silent snorted coldly. So it's confirmed now. And not yet. What does this Shao Qingyuan you saw look like? Tang Qijing paused and described Shao Qingyuan's appearance that day. He's tall and big, but his face is a little cold. He doesn't look easy to get along with. Yi Xilan's eyes turned cold. It's him. He didn't expect to see him again so soon. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1395, Grudge with Shao Qingyuan. Yi Xilan looked down on Shao Qingyuan. He was just a brat from the countryside. This guy had not even grown his hair, yet he dared to boast shamelessly that he had a way to prevent smallpox. What a joke. Even the capital of the Imperial Hospital couldn't cure this incurable disease that had lasted for thousands of years. Even the old divine doctor of the Bai family didn't say that he could do it. He, who couldn't even take her pulse, actually said that he could solve it. However, the emperor's cousin agreed and even let the second prince test it out himself. This was simply ridiculous. Too ridiculous. The royal bloodline had a noble status. How could they let a brat who came from nowhere do whatever he wanted? Yi Xilan disliked Shao Qingyuan because of this. When he heard that Shao Qingyuan was looking for Bai Muzi, he immediately got someone to spread the news that he had it. He did not expect Shao Qingyuan to agree to be his slave without thinking. This was the first time Yi Xilan had spoken to him face to face. How should he put it? Shao Qingyuan was different from the obsequious bumpkin he had imagined. He was also different from some servants who flattered him. Shao Qingyuan was not afraid of him. With his aura, people would believe that he was a descendant of a noble family. For a moment, Yi Xilan felt as if he was being unreasonable. He instantly lost the desire to tease him. He casually said that he was joking and asked someone to send him away. Unexpectedly, Shao Qingyuan suddenly went crazy and wanted to beat him up. *CK, this bastard. He was a royal prince. How could he be beaten up by a bumpkin? Wasn't he just using Bai Muzi to deceive him? As a royal prince, he was giving the guy face by putting in so much effort to fool him. Did he really think he was a nobody? There were many guards in the mansion, so Yi Xilan was not hurt at all. Yi Xilan was smug. He had wanted to ridicule Shao Qingyuan, who had been caught, but he did not expect to meet his fierce gaze. Yi Xilan felt guilty for a moment when he met his gaze. But he was a royal prince. If he didn't break the guy's legs when the guy wanted to hit him, where would he put his face? However, just as he was about to attack, Shao Qingyuan took out the fish talisman. Yi Xilan held her breath. He could deal with Shao Qingyuan, who had no status, but he couldn't touch Shao Qingyuan, who had the fish talisman. Yi Xilan could only let him go. However, the emperor's cousin found out about this and summoned him to the palace to scold him. Yi Xilan was unhappy, but he couldn't find trouble with Shao Qingyuan anymore. He even had to apologize to him respectfully. Even now, he still remembered this grievance deeply in his heart. Now that he had finally heard news of Shao Qingyuan, he had to vent his anger. Besides, what did he just hear? Yi Xilan looked at the servant again. You said that Shao Qingyuan opened a shop. And the shop even recruits female workers? Yes, Your Highness. Yi Xilan raised his hand to touch his chin and narrowed his eyes. After a while, he said to Tang Qijing, let's go. Bring me to see where that shop is. Tang Qijing's heart was filled with sorrow. He really did not want to get involved in these things. He couldn't afford to offend the royal prince. The Shao Qingyuan he saw last time didn't seem to be someone to be trifled with either. Otherwise, why would even the royal prince suffer? However, in front of the royal prince, Tang Qijing had no room to refuse. He could only smile and nod. He threw the money to pay the bill and walked out of the restaurant with Yi Xilan. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1396, Candidate Tang Qijing quickly brought Yi Xilan to Jinlan Street. This place was not far from Jinlan Street, and they arrived not long after. Standing opposite number 86, Tang Qijing pointed at the shop that was being renovated. That's the one. It's quite big. Yi Xilan nodded. It's indeed quite big. Is Shao Qingyuan going to open a medical center? As he spoke, he snorted coldly. In the past, he wasn't even a doctor. The cowpox vaccination method made him completely popular. However, why did he recruit female workers? Yi Xilan looked at the notice posted at the door. At this moment, there were already a few people looking at it. He pointed to a guard behind him. Go, take off that piece of paper and let me take a look. Yes. The guard quickly walked over and dispersed the onlookers. He tore off the paper. Carpenter Pang was busy and didn't notice. The guard had already handed the notice to Yi Xilan. The latter looked at the words written on it. It's best if he's sweet-looking, eloquent, and literate. Is he recruiting workers or choosing a wife? Tang Qijing hurriedly said, maybe he's doing that dirty thing in the name of recruiting workers. Yi Xilan thought so too. Although Shao Qingyuan looked as cold as ice and didn't get close to women, most people with dirty thoughts were hypocrites. Shao Qingyuan might be one of them. In any case, Yi Xilan was not stingy with his malicious guesses about Shao Qingyuan. Looking at the notice in his hand, Yi Xilan narrowed his eyes slightly. He suddenly had an idea and instructed the guards behind him. Then, he left without looking back. Tang Qijing did not hear him clearly. Seeing that the royal prince had left, he quickly followed. The guard pasted the notice back to its original position and walked in another direction. Gu Yundong did not know that she would attract such a person after putting up the notice. After she left the shop, she went straight to the Qin residence. This time, it was much easier to meet the Gu family. Since she was cooperating with the Gu family to open a shop, Gu Yundong went straight to the point. After Madame Gu knew why she was here, she immediately called Nanny Lu over. Nanny Lu was bestowed by the emperor. Granny Lu was shocked to learn that Gu Yundong and Madame Gu were going to open a shop that specialized in serving rich madams and young ladies. They also wanted to hire a capable female shopkeeper. They could even open such a shop. However, she came from the palace and was knowledgeable. She quickly thought of the key point. There were not many things in the palace, but women gathered together. It seemed to be easier to earn women's money. Nanny Lu quickly began to think about the candidates. Not long after, she thought of something. If that's the case, I really have a suitable candidate. Who? Nanny Xia, who used to serve imperial concubine Gao. Madame Gu was puzzled. Concubine Gao. Madame Gu vaguely felt that this name sounded familiar. Imperial concubine Gao was one of the few concubines in the former imperial palace who lived long. The late emperor was muddle-headed, so there were naturally countless concubines in the harem. As long as they were beautiful, many of them were included in his harem. However, although the late emperor liked beauties, these people were not given a high position at the beginning. Even if he occasionally wanted to confer the concubine title on a whim, not long after, he would pull her down because he was tired of this concubine. This happened repeatedly, and there were not many concubines who remained in high positions. Concubine Gao was different. She had followed the late emperor since he was young. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1397, Gu Yundong's Persuasion. Concubine Gao had risen step by step from the bottom. After rising to the position of consort virtue, she had been in that position and had not come down. The late emperor was capricious, and most of the other concubines were promoted and demoted. In the palace, other than the empress, only consortess sat there steadily. The late emperor had never touched her. If one did not have any tricks up their sleeves, who could do it? Nanny Xia was the capable nanny by concubine Gao's side. After the late emperor's death, concubine Gao's days were instantly quiet. She lived in a corner and was relaxed. Occasionally, she would chat with the Empress Dowager and reminisce about the past. However, she did not know if it was because her nerves had been too tense for the past few years, but when the late emperor passed away, she instantly relaxed. Instead, her body began to adapt. Over the past 2 years, she gradually fell ill. Not long ago, concubine Gao still couldn't hold on and was gone. It was said that the Empress Dowager had been sad for a long time and had closed herself in the palace for 2 days. Concubine Gao had no children. Before she passed away, she also had the intention to arrange for people to serve her. Nanny Xia had originally wanted to guard her tomb, but concubine Gao had flatly rejected her. Later on, Nanny Xia chose to leave the palace. She had entered the palace since she was young. For so many years, other than occasionally leaving the palace to do something, she had almost forgotten the outside world. Nanny Xia still had a trace of regret in her heart, so after concubine Gao passed away, she was released from the palace. Nanny Xia had money and an extraordinary status. After leaving the palace, many wealthy families invited her to the residence to be a nanny. However, they were all rejected by Nanny Xia. She had originally wanted to leave the palace to retire, so she wouldn't implicate herself again. However, what Nanny Xia did not expect was that she had overestimated herself. She was no longer used to life outside the palace. After resting for a while, she felt that she had nothing to do all day. She might as well be a nanny. Just 2 days ago, Nanny Xia had just caught up with Nanny Lu and complained. "Madam, if you think that Nanny Xia is feasible, I'll make a trip on your behalf and tell you about the situation. If it's too late, I'm afraid she'll enter someone else's house to be a nanny." Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. Of course. Nanny Lu thought for a moment. But madam, Nanny Xia is fine in other aspects, but she has always lived in the palace. She has never done business before. Gu Yundong nodded. I know. Aunt and me will give her business suggestions. Nanny Xia mainly mediated the customers' conflicts and looked after the shop assistants. With Nanny Xia's ability, she should be able to easily resolve the other small problems. As for business, she would make a plan and point out the direction. Even if she was not in the capital, there was still Madame Xia. It was enough. Nanny Lu was relieved to hear that. She immediately brought Gu Yundong and Madame Gu to Nanny Xia's residence. If she hadn't arrived in time, Nanny Xia might have really been invited away. When she heard that Gu Yundong wanted her to be a female shopkeeper, Nanny Xia refused at first. She was not familiar with business, and she had never thought of being a female shopkeeper. Seeing this, Gu Yundong smiled and said, "Nanny Xia, don't be in a hurry to refuse. Now that you have nothing to do, why don't you get to know our shop first? I'm recruiting female workers tomorrow. If Nanny Xia is free, why don't you go and watch the show?" Nanny Xia was stunned. Nanny Lu also persuaded her, so she agreed. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1398, Newly Bought Servants. It was already very late when Gu Yundong came out of Nanny Xia's house. She bade farewell to Madame Gu and brought Tong Shuidao home. Shao Qingyuan had already returned. Other than him and Shao Wen, there were 6 people standing at home. They were servants that Shao Qingyuan had bought from the brokerage today. There were 2 older people. They were a couple with the surname Tian. Uncle Tian, Aunt Tian, and their son was called Tian Zhuang. From now on, Uncle Tian would be the gatekeeper. Auntie Tian would help wash clothes and cook at home, and Tian Zhuang would help Shao Qingyuan. The other 3 were all women. 2 of them were about 30 years old, and one was about the same age as Tong Shui Tao. These three were prepared for the shop. One of the older women was surnamed Shao, and the other was surnamed Qin. The young girl was called Zhuo Wenxiang. They looked honest and clean. After Gu Yundong saw them, she left them to their work. The six of them immediately went to work. They were quiet and diligent. Gu Yundong then returned to his room with Shao Qingyuan and told him about Nanny Xia. Shao Qingyuan said, Nanny Xia didn't reject me outright, which means that she's actually curious. In less than 2 days, you can convince her. That's what I thought. Gu Yundong was actually not too worried about Nanny Xia. Instead, she was worried that it would be difficult to recruit people. Let's not talk about anything else. It doesn't seem easy to be literate. Shao Qingyuan poured her a cup of hot tea. Not necessarily. The capital is under the emperor. Compared to the Xuanhe prefecture, there are more literate women. That made sense, but Gu Yundong was still worried that no one would come to apply for the job tomorrow. However, the next day, she still woke up early to freshen up. She picked up Nanny Xia in high spirits and went to the shop on Jinlan Street. The few of them had just arrived outside the shop when they saw a lot of people surrounding the door. Gu Yundong was shocked and hurried forward. Only then did she realize that everyone was looking at the notice posted at the door. Some people were even surrounding Carpenter Pang and asking questions. Is what this notice says true? Is it really recruiting workers? But why female workers? That's right. What kind of business is this shop of yours? It can't be some indecent place, right? Someone burst into laughter and said disdainfully, you can't do that kind of business on this street. Ha ha ha. Gu Yundong frowned fiercely. She heard Carpenter Pang's anxious voice. No, you've misunderstood. This shop is a serious business, and the customers are all women, so the boss recruits female workers. The customers are all women. Don't joke. How can there be such a shop? Even the silver shop that sells gold and silver jewelry won't stop men from entering, right? I think the owner of this shop might be doing something shameful. The Ding family next door thought that this place hires embroiderers. They even said that they wanted their daughter to try it. I think it's better to forget it. I'm worried about such a strange shop. Besides, the embroiderer should be in the job description if it's desired. Who would write female workers? Don't you think so? The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. She turned around and saw Nanny Xia coming over and looking at him with a faint smile. Gu Yundong broke out in a cold sweat. Just as she was about to speak, she saw a pretty girl walk over and say to the people around the door, Sorry, can you make way? I want to go in. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1399, She's the Boss. Gu Yundong paused slightly when she heard this voice. The girl walked directly to Carpenter Pang and asked, I want to register. May I know where your boss is? Carpenter Pang heaved a sigh of relief and quickly said, The owner will be here at 7 in the morning. Miss, come in and wait. After a pause, he quickly added, Miss, don't worry. The owner is also a woman. As soon as she said this, Gu Yundong saw the girl relax slightly. It was obvious that she was a little nervous just now. She mustered her courage to walk forward. Gu Yundong turned her head, but from the corner of her eyes, she suddenly saw Nanny Xia's surprised expression. What is it? Nanny Xia smiled and shook her head, not saying anything. Gu Yundong shrugged and retracted her gaze. Then, she saw that there were actually a few girls surrounding the shop. Perhaps they had heard the discussions of the people beside them, so they had been huddled in a corner and did not dare to go forward. Now that they saw someone take the lead, two of their eyes became firm and they began to walk forward. One of them hurriedly followed behind the pretty girl. She was much better looking and walked to Carpenter Pang's side. I want to sign up too. Carpenter Pang invited the people who came to register directly. The shop in front had already been cleaned up by him. The tables and chairs were placed elsewhere, so the shop seemed a little empty. After the girl went in, 2 more girls came. Behind them, 3 young women also came in one after another. After that, there was nothing. Seeing that it was almost time, Yundong walked forward. The people at the door thought that she was also here to answer the call, so they made way for her to enter. Unexpectedly, Carpenter Pang saw her and immediately shouted in surprise, "Boss! Boss!" With a whoosh, everyone's eyes fell on Yundong. The few girls who had been standing silently at the side of the shop immediately looked over and looked at them nervously. Only the delicate girl looked at Nanny Xia in surprise. However, she quickly retracted her gaze. But Yundong keenly sensed that she seemed to be relieved. She raised her eyebrows slightly. Could it be that she knew Nanny Xia? Yundong smiled and said, "Hello, I'm the owner of this shop. I think everyone has seen the notice. Because our shop is in the business of female customers, the workers we hire, whether they do odd jobs or not, will all be women. This way, even if everyone works in the shop, you don't have to worry about being gossiped about. Without a man, there would be fewer people gossiping outside." Someone at the door asked curiously, "What kind of business is that?" Yundong turned her head and smiled. "You'll know when it opens. Why are you still keeping it a secret? If you don't explain everything clearly, will you be able to recruit anyone?" Yundong had already turned around and entered. Nanny Xia followed behind her. When they reached the corner of the shop, Yundong asked Tong Shui Tao to move a table and chair to the side. Then, she took out a brush and paper. Everyone looked at her actions in confusion. Even Nanny Xia, who was sitting behind her, looked curious. Yundong raised her head and said to the 7 people in front of her, "All right, since you've come in, you must want this job. To put it bluntly, our shop is actually a tea house, but it's different from the tea houses outside. We only entertain female guests. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1400, Mei Hong. Yundong was speaking. The onlookers outside the door were very curious, but they were far away and could only see what they were doing. They could not hear anything. In an instant, the curiosity of the people outside increased. Some people even wanted to squeeze in, but after taking 2 steps, they were blocked at the door by Carpenter Pang and his 2 disciples. Yundong pretended not to hear the commotion outside. She briefly explained the situation of the shop and then picked up her pen. "Now, you can introduce yourselves briefly. Tell me why you came to the shop and what you're best at." The 7 people in front of her looked at each other, not knowing what to say. In the end, the delicate girl who was the first to enter stepped forward and said with a slightly calm expression, "Boss, I'll go first." "Okay." This girl's voice was quite pleasant and her words were smooth. "My name is Mei Hong. I'm 26 years old this year and live at the entrance of South Bridge Alley. My family is poor and I have young siblings to take care of, so I came out to find work. I can endure hardships. I can serve tea and water very steadily. I know how to make tea and know a little about tea. There's no problem with being a shop assistant." Yundong raised her eyebrows. Her family was poor, but she knew how to drink tea. When she mentioned serving tea, could it be that she used to be a servant of some family? Yundong nodded and placed the piece of paper with her situation on the side. Then, she said, "Next." With the first one taking the lead, it was much easier for the second one to come up. "My name is Wei Shuxiang. I'm 15 years old this year and live on Dafeng Street." I am also poor and really need this job. Boss, please accept me. I'll be very obedient and diligent. I can take any hardship. Gu Yundong quickly raised her hand to interrupt her. What are you good at? Compared to Mei Hong, this girl seemed a little flustered. Wei Xiuxiang was stunned. She lowered her voice and said softly, I know how to wash clothes and cook. I also know how to serve tea and water. I also know how to embroider and wipe the table. Yes, I wipe the table especially clean. Gu Yundong nodded. I understand. Stand over there first. Next. When Wei Xiuxiang heard her say this, she immediately felt a little dejected. She thought about what she had just said and then Mei Hong's words. She suddenly felt that there was no hope for her and regretted her performance just now. The next person to come out was the pretty girl. This girl was the second to enter the shop with Mei Hong. As soon as she stepped forward, a smile appeared on her face, instantly making people feel that this girl was very likable. With that smile, everybody felt the surrounding atmosphere lighten, and she was in a good mood. The girl took a deep breath and said, my name is Qingyuan. I'm 14 years old this year and my family is in Jiufang Alley. My father has passed away, and my mother and I are the only ones in the family who rely on each other. All along, my mother has only taken on washing clothes outside. The weather has been cold these days, and my mother has frostbite on her hands. She fell ill and needs money to buy medicine. I saw that this place is recruiting female workers, so I came over to try. Gu Yundong nodded as she listened. Zhang Yingyue continued, I know how to embroider. I also know how to take care of people. I also know how to wash clothes, cook, and tidy up the house. I've always been the one tidying up my house. Gu Yundong knew what she was doing. Okay, next. The next one was a woman, about 27 or 28 years old. Although she was also nervous, she was much calmer once she spoke. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1401, Interview Method. I am Mrs. G, 27 years old this year. Gu Yundong interrupted her. Just tell me your name. If they worked in a shop, she had to know their name. Otherwise, they would be called Mrs. Tang or Mrs. Zhang. Gu Yundong felt a headache when she heard that. The woman quickly nodded. My name is Tang Lihua. I'm 27 years old this year and my family is also on Dafeng Street. My husband used to work to earn some money to live, but he fell some time ago and our family lost our income. I wanted to find some work. I know how to cook and clean the house. Gu Yundong nodded. All right, I understand. Next. The people behind might have already prepared a script in their hearts. Now, their speech was much smoother. Gu Yundong memorized everything and waited for everyone to register. Unexpectedly, Carpenter Pang brought 5 more girls. They must have seen it outside just now and mustered their courage to give it a try. Gu Yundong also asked them to introduce themselves. Interestingly, one of them was a girl with the surname Ding. She seemed to be the neighbor people mentioned at the door who had come to apply for an embroidery job. Gu Yundong looked at the list of 12 names in her hand. She thought for a moment and handed it to Nanny Xia behind her. Nanny, take a look. Nanny Xia took it. Your recruitment technique is quite novel. With that, she lowered her head and looked at it seriously. When Gu Yundong saw this, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She felt that she had succeeded halfway. She turned around again and faced the girl opposite her. Which of you can read? Her notice said that it was best to be literate, but she did not expect everyone to be so. As expected, more than half of the people shook their heads. There was only Mei Hong, Zhang Yingyue, Miss Ding, and Miss Li, forget it. It was already very rare for a girl to know a few words in this day and age. She should be content. Gu Yundong knew what was going on. She stood up and said, "Now, I want to see how you guys do your jobs." As she spoke, she said to them, "Follow me." The 12 of them looked at each other. Miss Mei Hong was the first to follow. Zhang Yingyue was second. Seeing this, the others followed her to the backyard. Gu Yundong brought them to the kitchen. The kitchen was already prepared. Although it was not completely tidied up or fully equipped, it was enough for the interview. 3 out of 12 people entered the house. Gu Yundong asked them to boil water. Then, she made tea and placed it on the table outside. It was a very simple thing. For these people in front of them, they might be used to it. This time, Gu Yundong specified which 3 people would go in first. Soon, the first batch of tea was boiled and brought out. Perhaps because they were too nervous, one of them suddenly tripped halfway through serving tea and knocked the cup over on the tray. Fortunately, she was quick-witted and managed to stabilize the tray in time. However, the hot tea still splashed out and burned the back of the girl's hand. Tong Shuitao immediately brought her to cold water. Gu Yundong gave her the ointment. The girl was about to cry. She felt that she had messed up. But Gu Yundong did not say anything and let the people behind continue. After everyone had tried it, Gu Yundong let everyone come to the shop in front again. Everyone looked at her, feeling very uneasy. Gu Yundong smiled and said, "All right, today's interview is over. I already know what to do. Everyone, go back first. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1402. I think highly of these two. As soon as Gu Yundong finished speaking, someone immediately asked, "Boss Gu, which of us passed?" "Those who pass, you'll post your names in the shop tomorrow." When everyone heard this, they were a little disappointed. In that case, were they still going to worry and be nervous for the entire day? Some people felt that their performance was very poor and were already in despair. Actually, this was also good. They did not have to watch the people around get hired. They could just come over tomorrow to ask. The 12 of them walked out one by one. There were still people waiting at the door. Seeing them come out, they immediately surrounded them. Gu Yundong looked up at the door. The others shook their heads and left. Only a lady and a woman were talking to everyone. Gu Yundong smiled. She took the list and crossed out their names. When the commotion outside stopped, Gu Yundong looked at Nanny Xia. "Nanny, what do you think?" Nanny Xia gave her a sidelong glance. "It's your shop that's hiring. Why are you asking me?" Gu Yundong nodded and spread out the list on the table in front of her. Then, she tapped on one of the names and said, "I think highly of this Mei Hong. She's steady and capable. Just as she said, she's very skilled and stable in serving tea. No matter who she's facing, she can quickly adjust her emotions. Her words are simple and straightforward. She doesn't drag her feet. She has a strong understanding and quick thinking." Nanny Xia had said not to hire her, but since Gu Yundong had spoken, she would still answer. "It's indeed not bad." Gu Yundong looked at her with a smile. "Nanny Xia is an old acquaintance of hers, right?" Nanny Xia was stunned and looked at her in surprise. "You?" When Mei Hong saw the nanny, she was stunned. Later, when Mei Hong spoke, the nanny's expression would become serious, and she could not help but pay more attention. Gu Yundong said, "I guess that Mei Hong should also be from the palace." "A palace maid?" When Nanny Xia looked at Gu Yundong again, her gaze was different. She had been immersed in the palace for many years. Putting everything else aside, it was not a problem for her to control her facial expression. Even if she had been out of the palace for a period of time, she would not be so relaxed that anyone could tell. The young lady in front of her was really surprising. Seeing that she was sizing her up, Yundong straightened her back slightly. How is it? Do you think I'm extremely smart and meticulous? Are you convinced by my charm and plan to be my female shopkeeper? Nanny Xia was speechless. This girl was actually so thick-skinned. She couldn't help but laugh. She reached out and tapped her. Nanny Xia did not answer and only asked, "What about the others?" Yundong smiled contentedly. "Oh, you're taking the initiative to care about the female staff in the shop. You still say that you're not convinced by my charm." Yundong quickly began to read the information of the others excitedly. She took out one of them. "Actually, I think this Zhang Yingyue is not bad. Her smile is indeed very sweet, although it's not very sincere. Moreover, she's literate and smart. She won't be in the limelight and knows her limits. Since there are so many advantages, what other concerns do you have? Her motive is not simple." Yundong sighed faintly. She placed Zhang Yingyu's information in a pending position, her eyes filled with pity. Nanny Xia had a whole new level of respect for her this time. No wonder Mrs. Qin was willing to work with her and was so close to her. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1403, Seduce Shao Qingyuan. At this moment, Zhang Yingyue, who had been waiting for Yundong, hurriedly walked towards a rouge shop not far away after leaving the shop. After entering the rouge shop, she entered the backyard. There were two people sitting there, playing chess and waiting for her. However, Prince Zhiyan was the only one who was bored out of his mind. Tang Qijing, who was sitting opposite him, felt very uncomfortable. He did not want to play chess, but he had no choice but to accompany the prince. It was fine if he accompanied him, but he could not win against the prince who was playing chess randomly. He had suffered too much. When he saw Zhang Yingyue, the royal prince threw away the chess piece in his hand and immediately asked her excitedly, "How is it?" Zhang Yingyue bowed and said, "I didn't see the owner surnamed Shao that the royal prince mentioned. The owner who came is a woman with the surname Gu." A woman. Not only Zhiyan, but even Tang Qijing, who was behind him, was surprised. How can it be a woman? It's indeed a woman. Zhang Yingyue said, but this boss Gu has a married woman's hairstyle. I guess she should be the wife of boss Shao. Shao Qingyuan is married. Oh, yes, yes, yes. I remember that he used to have a fiancée in the countryside. Zhiyan sat back down. In that case, it's not Shao Qingyuan who wants to recruit female workers. It's her wife. He frowned and said to Zhang Yingyue, "Tell me everything that happened today." Yes. Zhang Yingyue explained everything in detail, no matter how big or small it was. She was very clear. Zhiyan and Tang Qijing looked at each other. There was such a way to recruit people? It sounds like Shao Qingyuan's wife is quite capable. Her actions don't seem like she's from the countryside at all. Is there a mistake? Tang Qijing also nodded at the side. Actually, he felt that not only Mrs. Shao, but even Shao Qingyuan didn't look like he came from the countryside. However, he did not dare to say this. On the other hand, Zhang Yingyue thought for a moment and said, "There has always been a very powerful old woman following behind Mrs. Shao." You mean someone is guiding her from behind? Zhang Yingyue thought so, but she was not sure. Zhiyan asked again, "Then how did you perform today? What do you think of your chances of being chosen?" Zhang Yingyue was still very confident about this. "I'll follow the royal prince's instructions. I won't stand out or fall behind. My performance is all right. I meet the standards of the female worker that Boss Gu wants. No problem." Alright, you can do it in that shop first. If you have the chance, seduce Shao Qingyuan for me. I want to tear off his hypocritical face. It's best if his wife makes a big deal out of it. At that time, let's see who else in the capital still thinks that he has an outstanding character. Zhang Yingyue was actually not very willing to do this, but she had to listen to the royal prince's orders. Her mother's illness still needed the royal prince to treat her. Hence, she lowered her head and agreed. After Zhiyan sent her away, he thought about it and still felt that something was wrong. He found his guard. Go and investigate for me. Whose shop is that? Is it the Nie family's? Yes, sir. The guard received the order and left. Not long after, he returned with news in the afternoon. The shop still belongs to Miss Nie, but the person who is operating the shop now is Shao Qingyuan's wife, the Gu family, and... The guard paused before saying, Qin Wenzheng's wife. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1404. He must open a husband and wife shop. Zhiyan was stunned. You mean Qin Wenjing? Yes. The guard could only find out this much for the time being. Firstly, the time was limited, and secondly, the clues were really limited. He couldn't even figure out what business the shop for. After all, few people knew. Zhiyan frowned tightly. Qin Wenjing was not to be trifled with at all. Although he did not have any conflict with Qin Wenjing was now his cousin's favorite. Qin Wenzheng's wife had opened a shop. If he caused any trouble, Qin Wenjing would be angry. Zhiyan felt a headache coming on. No wonder Shao Qingyuan is so arrogant. It turns out that he has such a good relationship with Qin Wenjing. So the powerful old woman that Zhang Yingyue mentioned was borrowed by the Qin family. Your Highness, wasn't Qin Wenjing in the Xuanhe prefecture previously? Shao Qingyuan is the same. They might have known each other at that time, Tang Qijing said. Zhiyan thought so too. Tang Qijing asked carefully, then, do you still want Miss Zhang to seduce Shao Qingyuan? Why not? Zhiyan snorted. Shao Qingyuan can't resist the temptation because there's something wrong with his character. Qin Wenjing can't blame me. Besides, I'm not afraid of Qin Wenjing. I'm a dignified royal prince after all. If I don't like Shao, can't I cause trouble for him? Do I have to worry about whether there's anyone behind him? Tang Qijing echoed, that's right, that's right. Shao Qingyuan has a problem with his character. He can't blame the royal prince. Zhiyan nodded. Besides, I'm helping Mrs. Shao see her husband's true colors. The corners of Tang Qijing's mouth twitched. You make it sound like you're very familiar with Mrs. Gu. Gu Yundong, who was forced to see her husband's true colors, had already packed up the name list and returned to Hatai Alley. As soon as she entered, she smelled the faint smell of medicine in the courtyard. She followed the smell and indeed saw 2 bags of herbs in the storeroom. Shao Qingyuan was checking when he heard her footsteps. He turned around and asked, You're back. Did you recruit the female shop assistants? More or less. I already have someone in mind. She walked over, and Shao Wen, who was also in the warehouse, immediately pulled Tian Zhuang out, leaving the room for the 2 of them. Gu Yundong looked at the bags in front of her. You went to collect herbs today? Yes, all the herbs we collected today are finished, Shao Qingyuan said. There are a lot of good herbs in the capital. Then when do you plan to open a herb shop in the capital? You have to strike while the iron is hot. With Shao Qingyuan's current reputation in the capital, his business would definitely not be bad if he opened a shop. There are no suitable shops on Jinlong Street for rent. Gu Yundong wanted to laugh. Every time this guy looked for a shop, it would be best if it was adjacent to her own shop. He had to set up a couple's shop. Truly interesting. But how could it be so easy in this world? She walked over and hugged his waist. Qingyuan Street is used to open a milk tea shop. My future Gus wouldn't be open there. You can find a medicinal shop first. Later, my Gus will open near your medicinal shop. Shao Qingyuan thought about it and agreed. Although he felt that Qingyuan Street was not bad, it would be best if Gus opened there. This way, they would be able to promote each other and business would be better. However, the shops on Qingyuan Street were too difficult to buy. Nie Shuang had picked up a bargain. It was probably not easy for them to buy a shop in the short term. Shao Qingyuan thought that perhaps he should buy a couple of shops not far from Qingyuan Street. Therefore, the next day, Shao Qingyuan went to Nanka Street, which was adjacent to Qingyuan Street. As for Gu Yundong, she carried the paper with the name list and went to the shop. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1405. The last place. As soon as she reached the entrance of the shop, she saw more people than yesterday. The moment Gu Yundong appeared, everyone silently looked at her. Not only the onlookers, but also the 12 women who came to apply for the job yesterday. There were also a few other women beside them. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows and walked into the shop expressionlessly, followed by Nanny Xia and Tong Shuitao. As soon as she entered, the 12 people behind her followed. They looked a little nervous, and their hands were tightly clenched. Even Mei Hong, who had always been calm, was no exception. Gu Yundong had wanted to post the name list, but seeing that everyone was here, it was unnecessary to post it again. Since that was the case, she would announce it directly. Her gaze swept across the faces of the 12 people and finally landed on Mei Hong. Mei Hong was stunned. Her heart skipped a beat. She stared intently at Gu Yundong's mouth and heard her say her name. Mei Hong, you've been accepted. Mei Hong's eyes lit up. Although she was a little confused about the word accept, she still understood. She had been chosen. Mei Hong immediately took a step forward and said excitedly, "Thank you, boss. I'll do my best." Gu Yundong asked her to stand on the left first before looking at the next name. Tang Lihua. Tang Lihua was the 27-year-old woman. When she heard her name, she was stunned for a moment before she raised her head and looked at her nervously. Gu Yundong smiled. To the left. To the left. That was beside Mei Hong. Tang Lihua's eyes lit up. Thank you, boss. I will do a good job too. She was actually chosen. She couldn't believe it. She clearly didn't perform very well previously. At that time, she had thought for a long time but could not think of what she was good at. When she returned, she had already given up. She was just unwilling to give up today, so she came over early to wait. Actually, she was already thinking about what other work she could do. He did not expect her to be chosen. Tang Lihua lightly walked to Mei Hong's side. When the remaining people saw this, they couldn't help but feel more confident. If even Tang Lihua could be chosen, they definitely wouldn't have a problem. After all, in their impressions, they were better than Tang Lihua. Gu Yundong looked at the next person's name. Wei Xiuxiang, to the left. Wei Xiuxiang was stunned. Her face was filled with surprise. She had actually been chosen. She looked at Tang Lihua, who was already standing on the left. She and Tang Lihua lived on Dafeng Street, so they knew each other. When they returned home yesterday afternoon, the two of them had already given up hope. Unexpectedly, there was a silver lining. Gu Yundong lowered her head and read the next name. Ding Rujuan, to the left. She was the daughter of the family that had thought that it was an embroidery job. Her performance yesterday was not bad. She was not outstanding, but she was not bad either. She was a steady person. Ding Rujuan exhaled and stood beside Mei Hong. There were already 4 of them. Gu Yundong looked at the remaining people and said, "I'll only recruit 5 people this time. There's still one last spot." What? The rest of the people looked at her in shock. Their confident expressions just now were shattered by this sentence. They were filled with disbelief. Zhang Yinghua found it even harder to understand. How could this be? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know to report so we can fix it as soon as possible.